Hey everyone, welcome back to summer school here. So glad to have you with us. Looking forward to a great third day. Welcome back, George.
It is good to be back. I'm excited to see everybody in the chat. I really missed everybody yesterday. I had a good time in Atlanta at the conference and also got to hang out with some of our a junior and a senior of the HR Summer School. So it was a great day, but I'm glad to be here next to my friend Ben.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, this is going to be a great day. We have some big announcements for all of you, but we'll dive into the quick housekeeping stuff as usual, really quickly, just to run through some announcements and things. And we have some good things to share. So first up, let's get my stuff ready here. All right. Giveaways, always stay engaged, stay connected, keep chatting, keep sharing. We're going to keep giving things away. Expect that. Sherman HRCI credits. That email will be sent tomorrow. So Friday, if you're listening to this live, Friday is when you'll get that email. Post summer school, once it's all done, you'll get the email with those details. And then live stream, times are approximate, all that good stuff. So Jessa pinged me yesterday. We have dozens of people who have already raised their hands saying, hey, I'd love to get a little bit of mentoring, a little bit of connection out of this. This is a big reason we do summer school, is to connect all of you together. So if you are one of those people saying, hey, I'd like to be connected with someone else. Maybe I'm looking for a new job. Maybe I'm thinking about changing. Maybe I'm working at a company where I maybe not be appreciated. So I want to talk to someone else, get another opinion. This is all it's for. All that we're asking for is you, when we make these connections with you and someone else, is to connect 2 times. Just meet with them 2 times virtually, and that's it. Not a big lift. It's not a 2-year commitment. It's not a huge thing. So just connect with someone else. Really, really simple. So that's the plan. Ping Jessa if you want to be involved in that. Our supporters, our sponsors, our companies that come alongside us and make summer school possible every single year. We appreciate all of them out there. We'll hear from Caitlin at Plum today. We'll hear from Colin at ClearCompany. And we have a bunch of giveaways from Goody, 30-something giveaways from Goody. So it's going to be a big day. All right. So George yesterday got to go to Atlanta. You all saw him chime in midday there live. And I'm going to get this ready really quickly. Tell everybody what they're about to see.
So yesterday I had the opportunity to, for the first time 2 years ago, we had established the Unity Award, something that I feel like is bringing value. Want to recognize somebody that's really, bringing unity and inspiring and educating and connecting people within our community, and also connected, obviously, to HR Summer School. So I had the opportunity to sit down and really have a great discussion and a lovely surprise. So this person was not expecting it, but today I want to announce, and we're going to show a quick video of this year's 2023 Unity Award winner for HR Summer School.
All right, here we go.
This is George here. I am visiting in Atlanta. As many of you know, yesterday I missed out on day 2, but I've been in Atlanta and I had the opportunity to meet a few of our HR Summer School alumni. And I'm here today, right now, live in person with the Kenny Dang, that's been a part of our summer school. This is his senior year. He's representing the shirt from last year right now. And so we got the chance to meet up, and it's been an awesome opportunity to really get to know Kenny. I've met him virtually, and we've been virtual friends for the last 4 years, but today I get to meet the man, the myth, the legend in person. A lot of people out there, and I know that I say this as well, and I've learned a lot about Kenny, and he's a man of faith and family, but also got to learn a little bit about his journey along the way. And I realized after today, hanging out with him for the last hour or so, that the reason why Kenny has such great posts on LinkedIn, his summaries that I look forward to every night after summer school, is that he actually was in the journalist field for quite a time. But I just wanted to take a quick minute just to have Kenny, thought it'd be an opportunity, since we're live in person, to really ask Kenny what HR Summer School has meant to him over the last 4 years.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and welcome to HR Summer School. And this is my 4th year, and I have enjoyed the journey since the first year. And I have learned connect with a lot of people in the HR space, and it has been beneficial to my career. And I value it very much. And thank you, Dan and George, for making it happen every single year. And I'm truly blessed and grateful for the opportunity.
Awesome. So I just wanted to jump in, as all of you know, that this is our final day. It always makes me sad to say that, but it's our final day at HR Summer School. And something that Kenny did not know, and I just kind of got him over here hanging out and reached out to him, is that Kenny, I want to announce today that you are the 2023 HR Summer School Award winner for Unity Award.
Oh, wow.
And so everybody
Wow.
give it up for Kenny. As you're
Wow.
clapping right now, I'm gonna get off camera.
No,
All right. So Kenny had no clue, ladies and gentlemen. But the real reason why I wanted to hang out with him is that since I was in town speaking, I did speak at a conference, and since I was in town, I wanted to do this in person. Special design Nike by you. So I designed these for Kenny, and I wanted to do this in person with Kenny because he really embodies what the award is all about. I talked to Mildred, and she gave a thumbs up. And when we think about this award, we're talking about people who are bringing unity and the community together. And Kenny really does that and has been a incredible student of HR Summer School. And so for the first time ever, I get to do this in person, ladies and gentlemen. And so this is this year's School Unity Award shoe. And as always, on the back, it has HR as the summer school initials. And Kenny, I just want to say how much we appreciate you. And I'm sorry that I didn't really tell you the full truth why I wanted to see you today. But this is why HR Summer School 2023, my friend, these are for you. And we thank you so much for being a part of HR Summer School, the impact you do on the HR community, the love, the grace, the encouragement, and inspiration that you share. So once again, 2023 HR Summer School Unity Award winner, Mr. Kenny Dane. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, George. Thank you so much, HR School. Once again, this is my honor. And I just want to share my final thoughts. Really, HR Summer School is HR community where we come together, we educate, we connect, and we inspire one another. And this is what it represents. And thank you so much.
All right. Goodness. Congrats, Kenny. We appreciate you, my friends. And I'm a little jealous George got to meet you and not me yet, but that was so much fun. And we appreciate you for supporting, for being an active participant, for helping others by sharing your things you're learning from summer school, which is a big part of what this is all about. So kudos to you, my friends, and look forward to having you on the kind of the council along with Mildred to help us next year as we're picking next year's winner. So let's dive into what everyone's going to see today. Sound good?
Let's do it.
All right, so here's what you can expect today, everybody. We're going to go through, we're going to kick off. We've already done the announcements. We're going to jump in with Carrie, Missele, one of my longtime friends, now a new friend of George's, because he gets to interview her about taking the right risks as HR leaders. That's the big theme today that we're kicking off with, the big topic of today's session. And really, how do we take some risks, right? Not crazy ones, not ones that are going to get us in trouble, the risks that are the right kinds of risks, or maybe just a little trouble. We'll take it.
Good trouble.
Yes, good kinds of trouble. We'll stir up the pot just a little bit when we need to. So we're going to dive into that one. We're going to hear from MacGregor over at Plum about how to know your people, how to see them for who they are, for the potential that they have, not just for their job title, not just for their pay rate, which is easy to fall into sometimes. We're going to hear from Matthew Brown, Chief People Officer over at Schoox, big believer in culture and connecting with people and making this a valuable experience that we're delivering at work. And he's going to talk about the things that HR should not do or say again, which is a blast, great session. And then we'll have a session with Carmen about not living by the book, make some different decisions about your time, how you invest your resources, your attention, all those kinds of things to get the most out of life. Interesting session there. And then we're going to take a break, give some things away. We have a bunch of giveaways there. So here we go. We're going to dive into our first session today with Carrie.
And to another session. I am here with Carrie, Missele, and I'm so excited about this conversation. Carrie, would you mind, just as we begin the conversation, tell a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you, George. It's so nice to see you. Thank you for having me today. I am Carrie Missele, as you mentioned. I work for a consulting firm called Inspirant Group. I run the learning and development practice. So my day-to-day, my job is spent connecting with people in the learning space, leaders who want to bring really cool and customized programming development, employee development programming to their people. It's a really fun job and I really love it.
Awesome. Again, I'm glad to have this conversation, and it's a very Interesting one. I believe that everybody that's watching right now, you're going to get some great insights as we dive into the agency and risk. We're going to focus really quickly, and I just want to dive into this subject matter and this topic of why we cannot leave things to chance. What does that mean to you when that title comes out and you hear that? What does that mean to you, Carrie?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is that I want to be in the driver's seat. And I think you and I share that, right? We want to be the ones who are in control. I learned a couple of years ago, George, that agency is one of my own personal core values. I really don't like somebody else telling me what to do. And that can be problematic at times. But most of the time, that means that I have a pretty clear understanding of where I want to go and how I'm going to get there, right? And I want to figure that out on my own. I have lots of different ways, right, to try to get to where I want to be. I think this idea of agency is critical. I think also being accountable to yourself in terms of what does it look like? What do I want out of my life? What do I want as the next step? I think I was telling you before about how my team and I were recently introduced to, and this woman is not new. She's a thought leader and an expert in leadership. Her name is Cy Wakeman. She's new to me and my team. And she defines accountability as this mindset that we actually have impact over our outcomes. Isn't that cool?
That's awesome. The impact of that. Then remind us when we should embrace this agency, right? We should embrace this choice to foster change, whether it's individually or as an organization or company. Like, this is what we want to be about, not waiting or assuming someone has that power to make that decision or to make a change or to even bring up those changes. Why is it important to embrace, really foster this change moment?
I think, as we say, change is the one constant in all of our lives. And so why not get out in front of it? Instead of leaving it to chance, as you mentioned, or leaving it up to somebody else to make decisions for us or actually drive the bus that we're riding on, as going back to that analogy of driving, we get to decide where we're going. And I think it takes reflection, right? It takes really having an understanding of what makes you tick. What do you love to do? How do you like to show up for other people and for yourself, frankly? And then coming up with a plan. What does it look like if I want to end up, I'm here at A and I want to be at B? What does that look like? And I think I want to stress too, George, before we get really into it, this idea that it doesn't have to be some giant leap either. Taking risks can be really incremental. Like, incremental baby steps can get us eventually to where we want to go. And sometimes where we think we're going to go isn't necessarily where we actually end up. And sometimes it even, I see you shaking your head and smiling, because a lot of times we end up somewhere where we didn't anticipate, but it's better. Right?
Yeah, I'm smiling because as I think about this, I'm just a true believer that life and all the things that happen in our life doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choice, right? We make a choice, whether it's the choice that we're going to ignore the problem and the problem pops up and makes it even worse, or we make that choice to say we're going to attack this problem head on from the beginning and really make the changes necessary so it does not come back as an even worse decision down the line or even a worse situation that we're dealing with. I found that a lot of people, and I say this all the time, we really love change until change has to change us, right? I want to make this change for our organization. I want to make a change in the strategies of our business. I want to make this change in the process, but don't let that process and strategy come into my office or my territory or my comfort zone. But it's important that we change. And I'll ask you this, because my belief is that without change, there can be no growth. Right? There's no growth without change. In order for a plant to grow, there has to be some change, right? There has to be a season of watering. There has to be a season where the sun is shining down on. There has to be some seasons where we're pricking off and pulling out weeds around it so they continue to grow. Talk about the power of change when you take a choice and a decision and make the impact.
And I'll tell you, there's no truer statement, by the way, or like with your story of it's all fun and games until it happens to us, right? And we have to navigate it. Yeah. It is so tricky. I can speak from personal experience, George. My organization, Inspirant Group, just went through an acquisition back in March. And I would tell you, if you asked me before that announcement how I dealt with change, I would tell you I was a rock star. After the announcement, not so much. It's happening to me. I'm navigating all the things that I tell people how to navigate most of the time. So I think, to your point, when we're uncomfortable, we're growing, and change is uncomfortable. We have to address it and call it what it is. It is uncomfortable. So what does that look like in terms of I guess you're asking too, like, how are we fostering that change? Like, how do we drive or drive the change? Again, we're going to keep using that verb, I think, drive. For me, what it looks like for me, and I think a lot of other people, is just really sitting with it, doing a lot of reflection on, okay, what's actually happening. I love this idea of sticking to facts, right, George? Because we all get really good at telling ourselves stories in our heads about what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And oh man, can those stories take off? So the idea is, and maybe this is something you do with someone else you trust as well. It's an exercise and a conversation, and maybe not just personal reflection. So you do have that slightly unbiased or maybe unemotional person who can add some value to the conversation. But it's, what are the facts? What is the background? What is my assessment of the situation? For me personally, in this acquisition phase of what we're going through, my day-to-day hasn't changed a whole ton in terms of my job, but I'm choosing, even though things are a little uncomfortable because I'm trying to navigate having new leadership, I'm choosing to focus on the upside, right? I like that word. What's the upside here? It's like making a pro and con list, except I'm not going to focus on the con, right? Only the pro, because I just don't think it's worth anyone's time to focus on the con list. When we're embarking on some sort of change, we have to focus on the value, right? That upside. So what is the upside? Continue to tell yourself that. Really think through what that looks like for you. Just like whenever I go to talk to a group, I bet you do this too, George, I say out loud what I'm planning to facilitate, right? It sounds really great up here until it actually comes out. And then I know you're laughing because we have to practice it, right? Saying something that's in our head doesn't always happen. So I like to actually imagine what these things look like. If I name some upside, what does it actually look like in practice for me in my life? And I think really, again, focusing on facts is going to help really drive us incrementally. Again, we don't have to take these giant leaps, just baby steps to get to where we want to go.
When we get to where we want to go, we make those changes, we make those decisions, right? We're going to make that choice, as we're talking about. With change, then comes, in my belief, accountability, right? We talk about, when we make those change, holding ourselves accountable to the choices that we're making and the decisions that we're making, not just also internally, again, not just myself, but also as an organization, accountability. Carrie, define accountability for me from your perspective.
Yeah, I think that accountability is, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. People can rely on me as my component of whatever it is that we're trying to create. I'm going to do that, right? I can be relied upon to do whatever it is that I say. This new version of accountability is this idea that I have an impact, right? I have a choice over what happens to me, and I can decide rather than be passive, right? And what's going to happen with my life and whatever is happening next, I can decide what's going to happen. So I like to think of accountability to myself. Another thing that came up for me when you said that was like, who else am I accountable to in my job? If I'm unhappy in my role, George, let's just use it because we're talking about work, right? We're all professionals. If I'm unhappy in my role, who is that affecting? Not only me, of course, negatively, but also who else? Right? There's an up and a downstream for all of us where we work. So this idea that we have to think about the negative impact that our lack of choice, should I say, or accountability has on other people. What is it doing to affect the quality of work of the people who I work with?
Yeah. And so holding ourselves accountable. And when I think about accountability, Carrie, I think about, how does my values, right, as a person, how does my core values align with the choices that I'm making? Because I want to be accountable, not just to the choice, but how my core values align to that. As an organization, every decision that we make, every hire, every termination, every promotion, every recognition, every appreciation, everything has to be in alignment. How does our core values align? And when I think about accountability, those are things that I tie together. I tie in when I'm holding myself accountable. Is this aligned with my core values? Is this who I want to stand for as a man? Is this what I believe in? Because ultimately those things, it's a domino effect, right? If I don't hold myself accountable to a principle and a value that I literally stand by, then who am I? And am I defining myself and my true self accordingly? And so that accountability is important. And I appreciate you sharing that with us today on that piece. When we when there's accountability, and I'm going somewhere with this because as you're talking, I'm thinking, man, the domino effect, right? When
I
you're
know.
accountable to the things that you're deciding, your choices, you're not taking things lightly, you're not taking things by chance, but you're holding yourself accountable, making decisions. And when you make decisions, there's a reward, right? We ultimately do what we do in life because there's an outcome. We don't just do things just to do them. At least we don't, if you think you do, there's a reward, there's an outcome to everything that you do, right? Where there's a risk, there's a reward, whether it's a little risk or big risk. There's big rewards out there, ladies and gentlemen, if you did not know that, when you take big risk.
Yes.
And having more control over what happens to us, choices, not chances, we have more than we really think or acknowledge within our area. Tell me the importance of the rewards versus risk. We're holding ourselves accountable. We're making these choices. There's rewards with this, right? Versus the risk and how we look at it, what portion we look at it. Share a little bit about that, because I know this is something we, off the camera recorded. We talked about this, and I love your passion behind it. Share a little bit about the risk and rewards.
Yeah, I think, you know what, George, we talked about how neither of us has ever met anybody who didn't or who regretted taking a risk. And the other side of risk, as you mentioned, is reward. And what makes me think about this idea that maybe we need to reframe what reward means, because sometimes we get exactly what we thought we were going to get, right? It's something that's measurable. It's something that we can feel really deeply. Maybe it put us in a situation where we are earning more money, or we're living somewhere where it's warmer, or whatever's beyond that big risk. But maybe, just maybe, we learned something about what we actually want. Maybe the thing didn't turn out the way we thought, but it actually turned out better. Or maybe we learned, okay, I took that risk. I didn't like combust, right? I'm still here. And I learned that this isn't what I want anymore, or that this is actually what I want instead. So reframing it to think that reward can look like it's information. Not only is it value, as I mentioned I bring up weather because my husband and I 2 years ago moved our family from Chicago to Charlotte, and we chased warm weather, and I don't regret it for a minute because I don't like the winter. It's cold. No offense to anybody who loves the winter. I don't like being cold. And so we came to Charlotte, and it's warm. It's warm most of the time, right, where I am. So that's something I can actually feel. Another component of that move, and it's just coming to me now, just as an analogy, it's a pretty cool story. We really had this idea about where we were going to live, right? We wanted lots of acres and land, and we were going to build a custom house. And then we were renting in a really big neighborhood, George. And we started to look around, and we started to notice that our kids, who are young, had all this independence and flexibility and freedom to hop on their bike and run and play with their friends in the different parks that are here in the neighborhood. They found friends wherever they went. They'd step out their door and there were friends. And we thought, if we lived somewhere that's secluded, they're a little isolated, they wouldn't have this. And so we completely shifted our plan in terms of where we were going to live. I never imagined I'd be living in such a massive neighborhood. I have neighbors on all sides of me, but it's the right thing for our family. And I couldn't have told you that before we moved, or even once we moved. I still had this plan in my head. But what I learned was this season of life for our family, this is the perfect spot to be. So do you see how, like, it's not the reward, the sunshine is obvious. That came, and I can feel that, and that we knew was going to happen. That's almost like scientifically was going to be the case. But then we learned, and we got this really great gift too, in terms of this is actually what your family needs. And I know I'm speaking personal. We can translate that to work as well.
Yeah. So what's the worst that can happen then when we take a risk? Like, what's the worst? Because I can relate to you. I'm in Nashville. Actually, in 2019, the polar vortex happened. I was living in Indianapolis, Indiana, my hometown, and I was traveling, speaking in Bowling Green, Ohio. February 2019, negative 40 degrees, polar vortex comes through. It was one of those things where you take water out, throw it up in the sky, it comes down to powder. And I literally called my family. I said, hey, I will find the biggest house possible and let's move south. We can go to anything below Tennessee is considered south to me. I said, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, like anywhere that has less snow or the 2% chances of snow for the year.
Yes,
And we ended up
yes.
moving to Alpharetta, Georgia, north of Atlanta. And I bought 7,000 square foot. And I invited all the women who made an impact in my life to get out of the cold weather, move south. And I don't
Love
recommend
it.
that to everybody. Don't move in with your in-laws or extra family members. It's a bad idea. But I took that risk
Yeah.
because I just wanted to leave the environment that I am. What's the worst that can happen personally in the workplace when it comes to risk?
Yeah. I think you try something and you learn, and then you have, I really feel like then you have greater direction, right? You have greater clarity. The worst thing that happens is that you get more clarity when something doesn't work out as you had planned, right? You take a risk, you've done all the work, you focus on the facts, you focus on what matters to you. You mentioned core values, so critical. If you don't know what your core values are, I know, George, you support me in saying to who's ever out there, figure out what they are. Spend some time figuring out what your core values are, name them, write them down, remember them. And then if you do all this work and you decide, I'm going to take this leap, I'm going to do this thing, and then it doesn't end up as you thought, there's always something on that side that you can learn that's going to then help you with the next turn. Let's think about a GPS, right? When we're driving and there's the left turn and the right turn and the curved road, and then we go over here. Instead, we're going to take a left turn and send up a right. And we're going to see what's down that path instead. And I think there's really nothing more beautiful. I don't mean to sound really cheesy, but I'm telling you, like when we're in the driver's seat, we get to decide. And it's just really cool that what can come of it. And I'll stress again, I don't think there's a downside to taking a risk. I really don't, even if it doesn't look like you thought it was gonna.
Yeah. I want to wrap up our conversation. As we've talked both today and off camera over the last week, there's some key things that really stuck out to me that I really want to kind of focus on and get just a quick, if we do a rapid fire, I'm just going to say a few words, and I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that when it comes to, as we tie this together with why we cannot leave these things to chance. I believe if we were to give the audience key strategies for taking risk, finding accountability, not leaving things to chance, let's give them, let's say five key things. And I believe this is part of the conversation we've had.
Okay.
Number one being developing a plan. One of the best ways to ensure we don't leave important things to chance is developing a plan. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's about that reflection. It's a big word of mine. Actually, every year I come up with a word of the year. I'm not really big on New Year's resolutions, George, but I like this idea of choosing a word that's going to frame my decisions for the year or how I show up for myself and other people. Last year it was reflect. And I spent a lot of time reflecting on decisions I'd made, feelings I'm having. They say this isn't an original thought, George, but people say, like, gosh, if you see someone doing something and it gives you a little bit of a pang, like, follow that. What does that mean? Why do you feel uncomfortable? When I told people we were moving, George, you probably experienced the same thing. The first thing people said to me, friends of mine said, that's so brave. And I'm a little jealous.
Yeah.
I had people say that to me, and it's like, well, unpack that. Because what does that mean for you? It means some kind of change is coming your way, right? That you need to drive and be there. So I think focusing on reflecting on what you like, what makes you happy, what you don't like, to eliminate the things that you don't like. That plan has to be for you, right? What do you want? What do you wish you could do? Even if it's something like eliminating a commute. I know some of us are back to the office and it's really tricky when we work far away, or little things. It doesn't have to be some big giant thing. I want to stress that, right? Like, little things, create a plan, write it down, tell somebody else about it, because then it's real. Right?
The third thing is to take action. And it's really essential for people to do that when it comes to achieving their goals. We should be proactive in making sure we're taking those steps towards the objective, towards the outcome that we're desiring. Number 4 is seek help. When I heard you talking, this kind of pointed out at me, because sometimes we feel like we're doing things alone. Seeking help, how important is that for number 4?
I mean, tremendously. I think not only do we not want to feel alone in our situation and feeling maybe this level of unhappiness, whether it's in our role or our situation, whatever it might be, but also I mentioned earlier this idea that we could have this objective other party, right, who's not emotional about the situation. We can't help as human beings. Like, if we're feeling a certain way, right, our emotions are extreme because of whatever it is that we want to change. We need somebody who cares about us, who knows us, but also doesn't feel emotional about it. Emotions get in the way of making good decisions, frankly. So asking other people to show up for you and talk to you about what it is that you're thinking about, they may bring up things too that you're really good at or encourage you in ways that you never thought possible.
Yeah. And number 5, we've talked about this already, is staying accountable, encouraging everybody out there to stay accountable to whatever it is that you're focused on and whatever thing that it is that you're trying to decide, develop a plan, prioritize, take action, seek help, and then stay accountable. Carrie, I appreciate this conversation so much. I feel like we can continue to go on and on and on. If somebody wanted to connect with you, where would they connect with you?
The best place certainly is LinkedIn. Right here on LinkedIn, I think I'm happy to engage with anyone who wants to talk further about this topic or any other topics they're interested in, any questions. I love talking about this stuff. I agree. We could talk about it forever, George.
Awesome. And any last words that you'd like to share with the audience as we sign off this session today?
You know what? I just think be inspired to go out there and do what makes you happy. I think it sounds easy. It's not super easy, but it's rewarding and it's worth it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And this does it for this session. Carrie, I appreciate your time.
All right, goodness, good things there from Carrie and from George as well, right? Great conversation. Carrie's in the chat there. Thank you, my friend, for being there with us. Carrie, if you take a second, pop all three of your key points in there again, because actually not three, but some of your points, because some people are like, I missed number 3, I missed number 2. Oh, someone did. Perfect. Thank you, Ashley. Okay, great. Real-time community taking care of each other. Love it. All right.
Thank you, class. Thank you.
Yes.
Joining in.
Yes. She's the one, Ashley's the one who raises her hand when they're like, does anyone know where this is on the map? All right. So great conversation there with Carrie Missele on taking some risks, taking the right risks, making sure that you're willing to put yourself out there a little bit, because that's where you get the greatest potential reward. Excellent session. Next up, we're going to hear from MacGregor over at Plum. They're one of the supporters of the event this year. I'll make sure and post a link in just a minute into the here on the screen so you can see that. You can go and check that out. If you didn't do this last year, if you did, you're welcome to do it again. But they're going to unlock the entire Plum profile for you guys to see your strengths, to see your development tools, all that good stuff. And I know all of you want to see what potential you have as talent leaders. So really fun way to see yourself, and come back and post those when you come back. So here we go with MacGregor. Family, so glad to be back here with you. And you probably recognize Caitlin from Plum. Last year we had her on with us, and she talked to us a lot about some of the things they're doing to help employers really see and understand their people at a deeper level, and at the same time helping each individual person who's using their Plum assessment to understand more about themselves. And so such a fun mission, such a fun approach to the world. And Caitlin, we're so glad to have you back here with us again.
Thank you. It was my highlight of last summer, and I'm so excited to do it again.
Yes, I won't tell the kids that you said that was the highlight. We'll keep that away from them. So before we get into this, some of the audience may be new to Caitlin, maybe new to Plum. Would you give us a second, take a second, tell us more about who you are and what you do, please?
So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plum. We've been around for over a decade, and we took best-in-class industrial organizational psychology and figured out how to use all that science to really understand the human behind the work, but more importantly, create a positive experience that gives insights to the individual and to the company to really match people to jobs that'll make them happy, fulfilled, and thrive, and help them develop and really be able to predict where somebody's going to be successful, how they're going to be successful based on not what they've done historically, but based on what they could do if just given the opportunity.
Yeah, it's again, a huge mission, a lot of impact. It's such an exciting conversation, and I can't wait to dig into that in some practical ways as we're going through this conversation. So one of the things I want to start off with is the new book that I wrote recently just came out around talent scarcity and why it's so hard to find good people, and employers are struggling with this. Talk about what you're hearing, because you have this really unique perspective of talking to heads of TA, other leaders at organizations that are facing this every day. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, the top 3 problem that's happening in the boardroom right now that's being discussed is the fact that there's this major talent crisis. And it is a top priority for CEOs, and people don't know how to solve for it because there's a double problem that's happening. One, there's not enough skilled talent at the top of the funnel. There's not enough people that have already done that job to fill all the empty positions. There's over 11 million in the US alone that are unfilled right now. And that means banks aren't opening branches, restaurants aren't opening for breakfast. It's really impacting the bottom line of companies. But at the same time, they can't hold on to the people that they do have because the power has shifted. You can't just say, here's your paycheck and you have to show up 9 to 5 and do whatever I say and command and control. Post-pandemic, people want to be in jobs that make them happy, fulfilled, and thrive. They have more control. They don't have to change cities to go and work for a different company anymore. So people have a lot more of the power and can go other places easily. And so there's really this imbalance where you can't fill we call it a leaky bucket problem. You can't fill the bucket from the top because there isn't enough skilled talent, and then you can't hold on to the talent you do have. And companies are scrambling right now on how to solve for this leaky bucket problem, how to solve for this labor shortage. And then our point of view is this is the time to start doing things differently. It needs to be about screening in talent that the competition's not looking at those transferable soft skills, looking at if you were able to give somebody the opportunity, if you were able to upskill in the job, would they be successful? And really looking at screening in people that you wouldn't have considered before. And at the same time, using the same data on your existing employees. We should be looking at every open role. We should be looking at our own internal talent first, making sure that we don't have the people already there to be able to fill those roles, and looking at understanding. We see all the time higher level people in the organization, if they've been successful in marketing, they'll be like, oh, you've been a great marketing leader. I'm going to pick you up and now drop you into HR, and I trust that you're going to be great. Or you're in HR, I'm going to trust that I can drop you into operations. And we take these risks on senior level people to have cross-departmental experience. But it's actually our more junior employees and our mid-level employees that's the best opportunity, is to cross-pollinate and give them opportunities in other places of the organization and develop them and grow them through not that career ladder, but career lattice. And so this is really about using this data on understanding people's innate talents and understanding where they will thrive, and then understanding where the right place is to invest in their upskilling and giving them on-the-job experience to change and fill these empty roles. And so the conversation we're having is how to imagine solving this leaky bucket problem, not with a whole bunch of historical data on what they've done, but really looking at those innate talents like innovation and communication and execution that predict future success if you align them to roles that really need those talents.
What is so funny to me is sometimes we struggle with that as HR leaders. Like, how do I support that? How do I get on board with that thing? But yet you talk to so many people who are in the HR, in the talent profession. They're like, oh yeah, I was a teacher and now I'm in, or I was a whatever else, and now I'm in this space. So we've done that. Many of us listening and right now probably have made that transition from somewhere wildly outside the space. And by the way, if you have, just go ahead and drop in the chat. We'd love to hear like all the fun, unique stories, the lattice, like you talked about, Caitlin, where it's, yes, there's a ladder and I jumped off of it and took some other random route, ended up here. That happens all the time in our world, but we're like, yeah, but that won't work for this. And y'all have seen that so many times where it absolutely is possible, because you're looking for these other predictors of success, not just, okay, can you code, or can you have this? Those things do matter, right? I don't want a heart surgeon that's just nice. I want them to know how to do heart surgery. But for a lot of other roles, it's, hey, guess what? That thing that is a blocker for a lot of great potential people, internal and external, shouldn't actually be a blocker. It's something they can learn on the job. It's something they can do with minimal training. It's something they can, right? This little bit will get them there versus no. You've got to come back when you have everything perfect and buttoned up. And there's not a perfect candidate out there, especially right now, as you were saying.
Yeah, I think a lot of us had that story that we have the success in our career now because somebody saw potential in us along the way and gave us an opportunity. And that's really why I started Plum, was to not just make this gut and chance, but to really level the playing field, give everybody that opportunity to be seen and given that opportunity to excel. And that's really about providing that data. That's what's been missing. And in all fairness, this wasn't possible a decade ago. Plum has been able to do things that haven't been seen in the industry in terms of starting with the individual. We have over a 90% completion rate of our 25 minute untimed assessment because people get value from the report. They are enabled, they are put in the driver's seat of their own career development with the data that they get, them and themselves, and they own that data throughout their career. They don't have to retake it. And that Plum profile really is changing the value equation where they're empowered with their own data. But at the same time, we've also figured out how to quantify the behavioral needs. When you have an interview panel, what are the behaviors that they think are actually required for success in that role? Like, all organizations have adopted KPIs, key performance indicators. You don't borrow KPIs from another company. You don't look at KPIs from 5 years ago. You really define what success looks like moving forward. And we figured out how to define those KPIs, those key behavioral indicators, in just 8 minutes. And what that does is that means you can match people to the behavioral needs of roles at all levels throughout the organization. It really completely disrupts the old way of approaching this, where typically this data was only accessible through expensive consultants. It was only accessible for high volume roles or high level executive roles. It wasn't something that every single person in every single role could have. And now that we've been able to figure that out, it really scales this data and unlocks the ability to use this data on new use cases in a way that wasn't possible. And I think the opportunity in this post-pandemic world is to say, what does the company care about? They look at a financial balance sheet. The executives, CEOs, every single week are looking at their profit and loss statements. They know how to read a financial statement. But as you said in the opening, what do they know about their people? They know compensation data, but like, do they understand if they're trying to be an innovative company, how many people are actually jump out of bed in the morning excited about coming up with innovative solutions? If they're going through massive transformation, do they have leaders that thrive in an environment that requires them to adapt? Or are they really risk adverse? What data do they really have about their people? And we are in a stage now where that is some of the most valuable data, is understanding the potential of your employees and being able to put them into roles that'll make them happy, fulfilled, and thrive, which will allow them to actually stay and stop the bleed and make people want to actually contribute in a meaningful way to the productivity and growth of the company.
There's two things I want to touch on. Number one, you've used the word potential a couple of times, and I haven't even told you this, by the way, so this is new for you. But one of the things we found in our new hiring research, we asked candidates, how can a company most respect you? What can, of all the things they can do, what is the thing that puts them at the top of your list in terms of they showed me respect in the hiring process? The number one thing they could do is see the potential in someone, not just what you are or whatever resume you have or their skills today, but what is your potential for future success? So you've talked about that a couple of times, and you're right in line with what the data say the people out there are looking for right now. The other piece, one of the pushbacks I'll say we get sometimes when we talk about things like Plum and other tools like that is people will say, yeah, but well, that doesn't tell you everything about someone, or that's going to pigeonhole someone. Y'all talk about this in terms of drivers and drainers. Would you talk about that piece of it? Because I want someone to hear that component saying, oh, well, in your example a minute ago, well, we have people that are risk averse, so they'll never work out. You never want to say that, but it just requires a different approach for them. Talk about the drivers and drainers, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so there's kind of two lenses to look at this through. One is on the individual level. What is going to set somebody up to be their best selves? Yes. What's going to allow them to outperform their peers and to truly like excel in their role? And at the same time, what is going to make them want to every day come back into work and give them their best selves? Like, we have so many people that are experiencing burnout because it's not that they can't do the job, it's that it's draining. And there's nothing refilling their bucket. There's nothing that's giving back. It's just draining and draining and draining. And then they have nothing left to give. So there's this, do we care about people being set up to succeed? Do we care about them being in roles that make them fulfilled and that they have that ability to continually be motivated and energized by their job? So part of this is not about just, well, am I hiring somebody that's going to outperform their peers? It's also like, how do we see people? Because there are roles where if you put me into a job where I had to do the same process day in, day out, or I was the person that you hired to create a very, very, very detailed plan and hold everybody to that detailed plan, I would be exhausted. Yeah. That is not a good use of me as an individual. It's a loss. But you put me in a different role where I get to set a vision and I get to align people towards that vision. And I get to be in a position where every week is a little bit different and there's constant growth and change. I'm going to be my best self. And so it's understanding that it's not a bad or a good, it's about, are we tapping into people's superpowers? And that's why the soft skills have been rebranded to be durable skills, because they have a long shelf life, or power skills have been talked about, whatever you want to call it. These are the things that make me exceptional. And when I get to use my superpowers, I outperform and I feel great as an individual. And this is data that is currently not in the equation when we think about every candidate that applies for a job. It's not the data that we're thinking about when we're launching a talent management program. But there's no reason we don't have this data on every single person, and why we're not mutually motivated to put them into roles that they're going to be their best selves.
That's one of the things I was talking to you about before we started recording. Is I was actually at an event in New York City recently and was hearing from these different leaders talking about how do we understand the skills of our people? How do we use that to make decisions, everything else? And there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the leaders said, yeah, my problem is I want people who are compassionate. I want people who care, who can really communicate. And the problem is there may be a skill for writing or a skill for verbal communication, but we're missing all the other pieces that wrap around that are really hard to pinpoint what's in the traditional. Oh, let's look at your resume. Okay, Caitlin, none of those things you talked about a minute ago are in your resume, right? The things that really drive you, that bring out the best, that bring you to life when it comes to work, none of those are listed out. It's hard to even describe some of those without some of the more advanced sort of psychometrics around it. So I think that's such an exciting thing for us to say. We can really see our people, not just for whatever skills they have, but for the real potential they have, and help to find and sculpt the work around them to bring out their superpowers. Like you said a minute ago, I love talking about it in that regard. There's a great book years ago that says everyone has a zone of genius. How do we get people working in their zone of genius, not in their zone of incompetence or just even their zone of competence? Yeah, I can do it, but it's not my best use, right? That's exciting.
And I think that a lot of people that are in HR, I mean, we went into this field of business because we care about people. We care, but do we have the data to really reflect that care? Do we really have the data to set people up for success? And the answer is 10 years ago, probably not. It wasn't possible. But now in 2023, it is possible. It is really possible to put everybody into that place where they're their best selves, they're in that genius flow. It's not as hard or as expensive as people expect. And it's something where the individual, what we find is when people complete the Plum assessment, they will not always get hired or not always get the promotion that they wanted, but they are empowered with self-awareness and data that they're part of the equation. They're not just sitting around waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. They're proactively advocating for themselves better. They're proactively saying, hey, I really enjoy these kind of challenges, and I'd love an opportunity to sink my teeth into more of this stuff. And this stuff is really draining, and I'm happy to do it. But if this is I'm spending over 50% of my day every day on this, I'm really just not going to have the capacity to deliver my best self with this other stuff. And so it's also about understanding that it's about providing the data to that individual and letting them be part of the conversation. So much of the way that a lot of HR tech has been built has been very top down. It follows that command and control, but there is a way to have this bottom up participation from the individuals, where we have people that will share by the minute their Plum profile on LinkedIn, thanking the employer for the opportunity to be seen for who they are. Even if they don't get the job, they'll be like, this was a great experience. Friends, you should go and apply and take it. We have customers where they may not get the job, but they want that candidate to turn around and become a customer. So they want to keep that positive experience. So it's really about that value creation. And this data helps create that bigger value creation.
Can I ask you about one more stakeholder kind of in this relationship here? We talked about the employer side a little bit, really understanding our people, talk about the human side, the individual side. One of the things that we see in the data is an employee tells us that there is statistically zero chance of them feeling support from their manager, their leader, if they don't first understand them. So if you don't know me, you can't help me, essentially is what we see. Talk about what you hear from managers that suddenly see Caitlin for more than just the job title and the pay rate, like you mentioned earlier, suddenly having that insight into someone. Talk about that piece of it, if you don't mind, for a minute, because I think that's a really interesting aspect of this too. And a lot of people listening in probably are like, this is great, but I need managers to be on board. And I think you sharing some of that perspective would help them to understand just how valuable that can be.
Yeah, that's great timing, because we had an incredible testimonial come out today specifically around how what they did in the organization is they empowered the managers. A very simple training session. It's all very intuitive, but they specifically said this is going to be now part of your one-on-one conversation. So when you're thinking about looking at what drives and drains somebody, it's not about are they good or bad at it, or could they or couldn't. It's about same of the stuff that we just talked about. It's really about, are you getting the best out of them as you delegate work? Are you delegating the right work to the right people? And really saying that during your one-on-ones, this is an opportunity to dive in. This is an opportunity to ask them questions about their development. And a lot of people think that development and growth is about a manager telling a direct report, this is what you should do next. Actually, the best models are hearing the employee. So the great thing with this is that this empowers the individual, and there's questions that they can have and conversations they can have with their manager. But really, this is an opportunity for the individual. if they have the ear of the manager to better articulate what they're enjoying in work, what they would like to do more of, what they would like to see different, how the manager can best support them. It gives them freedom and language to help communicate what their needs are. And it gives permission for the manager to listen and to take this as, oh, this is an opportunity for me to better support them. This is an opportunity for me to be better educated. So what it really does is everyone should be having one-on-ones. It changes the nature of the conversation because there's a universal language to talk about innovation and communication, execution. There's this non-threatening language of what drives me and what drains me and how I can be given support to help develop coping strategies so that this becomes less draining. Hey, I notice you're really good at that and this really drains me. Is it okay if I ask you, for a bit of help on this? Or what's your strategy? Because then maybe you can help me develop one faster. So it just makes those conversations get to the heart of how we can truly support and develop our people.
Oh, perfect. Love that. And it's just an awesome thing to end on. So if someone wants to connect with Plum, learn more about what the team is up to, what's the best way for them to do that?
So we are going to give you a link so that everyone can complete their Plum profile, but we're going to unlock the professional development guide, which is normally a paid piece. So everyone can see all 10 talents, what drives and drains them, and they can have this data themselves. And so they can also reach out to hello@plum.io, and we're happy to provide support, or people can connect with me directly or send me an email to Caitlin, Caitlin @plum.io. So we'll give you all that information, drop it in the chat, and people can see firsthand how this can transform and share it with your colleagues too.
Excellent. I know one of the things that was most fun for me last year, I think, is people going and taking their Plum and then come back and saying, "Hey, here it is." So that was a blast. So if any of you go do that, come back, let us know what your top strengths are. Let us know some of your drivers, those kind of things. It's just a lot of fun to see how you compare, you contrast, and every one of us, we're all doing similar types of work as HR leaders, but we all approach it very differently. We have different things that bring out the best from us. And it's a good reminder there. Caitlin, thank you to you and to the Plum team for supporting summer school. Appreciate you and look forward to chatting again soon.
Thank you, Ben.
Absolutely. To everybody else out there, more HR summer school coming right up. Okay. What do you think about that, George? You're smiling big.
I love Plum. I'm a huge fan of the software. Obviously, I did it last year. I actually got a little early peek before the session and got it. And I know the chat is just blowing up on that. Two things that really stick out. Number one, you're going to be surprised, but everybody doesn't get to see the behind the scenes bin every time data. I think I counted data 14 times, and then it was going on in the conversations in the chat, and what that means to you and how it really drives the business and helps the organizations is really be able to get to know them, but also understanding your strengths and the strength finders within yourself. The surprising thing that I see in a lot of people and talking to a lot of people, had an opportunity yesterday with Norma and Kenny yesterday, just talking about different things that they did not know about themselves and what Plum, these assessments can do to really find out, oh, I do have a passion for this and this is how it triggers. I always wonder why I would kind of lean towards this area. And so being able to align those things, it's important to have alignment and the impact once you find that alignment, it can do for your future. So having that with your team, your organization is a powerful tool to find that alignment of what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Looking at this assessment and then how then you can drive it even more to the next level. So data, alignment, driving.
Once it's visible, it's actionable, right?
I'm halfway through my data acronym. Data. Then we got data alignment. We got trust and appreciation.
Awesome. Okay, great stuff. Okay, we have one or two more sessions. I'm trying to remember the actual agenda off the top of my head. We have two more sessions here. We're going to hear from Matthew Brown next from Schoox. We're going to hear from him about things that HR should never say again. I can't wait to hear from you in the chat what you think about these things that he's going to lay out there for us, because all of us probably have heard something at some point. We're like, oh gosh, we probably should stop saying that as a profession. And I asked him specifically, hey, I want you to show up and do that for us. Help us to lay those out, some things that we need to quit doing because they're holding us back. They're helping, they're reinforcing the stereotype. They're making us less effective. Let's tackle these things right now. So here we go with Matthew Brown. School family, so glad to be back here with you and looking forward to another great conversation, great session here. And I'm going to give Matthew a hat tip, like right out of the box, because one of the things I look for when I'm looking for people who are going to have things to share with the community, things that are relevant to all of you, things that are going to inspire you, maybe step on your toes a little bit, which is what we're going to try to do today in the conversation, I think, is someone who's been plugged into the community, people who are sharing, who are active. And one of the things I've heard from Matthew over the years is he doesn't just show up for summer school. He's posting about it all around, but he's also saying, hey, team, let's show up here together. Let's all learn something. Let's debrief when we're done, like really making it a team development activity. And I just love that about you, my friend. So glad to have you here on Summer School as a speaker, as a presenter, as a sharer this time, if that even is a thing. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you for having me, and a hat tip back to you as well.
All right.
Well, who's awesome? You're awesome.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Why not? So let's dive into this. So the first thing I want to do, actually, before we dive into the good stuff, is take a minute, tell the audience who you are and what you do before we get into the good stuff.
I am Matthew Brown, and I serve as the Chief People and Culture Officer for a learning management solution provider named Schoox. I am honored to be able to work at this organization where I do get to challenge the way it's always been done and really reimagine HR in a way that is right for our organization, staying within the legal compliance lanes, but everything outside of that, let's do what's right for us, and let's not be afraid to be bold.
Awesome. We got a minimum standard. Let's set a really high standard for everything else. I love that. Excellent. All right. So let's get into this. You kind of were foreshadowing a bit of what we're going to talk about, but this session is called 4 Things HR Should Never Say or Do Again. We're going to kind of leave that open a little bit, but really, what are the things that we do as HR leaders, as practitioners, things that either we were taught that way, we've learned this inappropriately or improperly? I want to just cast a big net for you, open it up to set the stage there, but that's what I was hoping you would share with us today. Give us some encouragement, step on some toes. I probably deserve it a little bit too. So I'm so excited for this. What do you have?
It's when you reached out around this topic, I was so excited, and there's so many different ways that we could explore. So it was really hard to rein it into like 4 things, but we're going to try to get there. Yep. So I want to open us up really with something that we should stop doing is that we should stop supporting and perpetuating this notion of fear of HR as a function. And I think you ask any employee in any company around the globe, what do you think about HR? And their first response is usually something like, I don't like it. I'm afraid. Yes. When they show up in a meeting, something bad's going to happen. And, some of this is just years and years of managing the compliance side of HR and not really bringing the human element back. But more recently, what I'm noticing, and my opinion about this, is that the reason we are still here is because we're stuck in inaction. So we're not doing anything to change it. We're not actively trying to change it. We're just heads down, get the job done as best we can. One of the ways that we could really lean into this and start pushing back is think about how we bring authenticity into the workplace. We are often the hub that supports all things employee experience, whether that be the diversity conversation, whether that be policies, procedures, whether that be work-life balance, culture, benefits. All of these components come together. And I don't know how many chief people officers that show up to meetings with this kind of stuff, right? Showing up in the background, purple hair. Again, I'm fortunate that I get to work at an organization that allows me to just be who I am. But when we lead with that, it creates an environment that fosters trust. It sets an example that it's okay to push a little bit further and maybe to challenge that mindset of leave the baggage outside the workplace. When you show up to work, be the drone, don't be a person.
I agree with you. Like the roots of it are, we've got to make sure we're squared away on the compliance, everything else. We've got to make sure all the boxes are checked. But just like you did in your intro, you're like, yes, we're doing those things. And then that's the bare minimum. Everything else after that is what we're actually striving for. And if you go to school and you get your degree in HR, like I did, and like many people probably did in the audience here, or you get your certification, they tell you what those minimum standards are. Don't do this or bad things happen. But very rarely do they say, by the way, this is what you should aspire to. This is what amazing HR and people teams look like. This is what a culture looks like that you are proud of and you can celebrate, and your people are more proud of it than you are, which is an amazing place to be. All right. That's the problem. I think is we spend all this time, all this effort, all the knowledge and education is around just setting this floor, and we don't ever look at what's beyond that. And the benefit of events like this and people like you spreading that and talking about this is, I'm hoping it's going to continue to be a trend that we start looking at the higher standard and the higher focus of things, not just looking at the floor, the threshold, the minimum, like don't do this or bad things happen, because that's a bad place to spend your time.
It takes one voice to open the conversation, two voices amplify the conversation, and so forth. And we're hearing a lot of discussion in the HR communities these days around culture. It's becoming finally something we're talking about openly, but also I think some businesses still get it wrong and just assume culture is a thing that one person creates, one person manages. We say what it is, and it is. And that's not the case. It has to be nourished. It has to be fostered and developed over time, which means you've got to broaden how you think about the organization. Going back to that, stop perpetuating the fear of HR. Let's surround you with love and embrace all of our differences. Let's understand what all the differences are and how they come together, how they create this beautiful result when we can learn from one another, step outside our comfort zone just a bit.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the audience is all on board with this. They're like, yes, let's do it. Awesome. I'm with you, Matthew. All right. So that's one. Stop perpetuating this fear of HR as a function, right? Be people, be humans, don't be robot. What's next?
Stop accepting the status quo. I think HR is a function, right? Like the world is evolving every day. We have new people, new things, new thoughts. But HR as a function seems to be lost in time somewhere, I'm going to say between 1990 and 2010. You know, there are
generous. Let's go for like 1980 to 1995. Like, okay.
I mean, I'm seeing some of the
Pre-internet
1980s stuff like start to drop out of there. So I figured I'd give us a good, 20, 30 year range there to work
Very
with.
optimistic. I appreciate that, Matthew.
But what I'm talking about, whether it's the practices, the processes, the tools, right? We were all familiar with that legacy HR concept, and we get stuck there. And it can be easy to get stuck there because that's, in some ways, that's the compliance lane. So in the earlier point that I made, right, the trust issue kind of stems a little bit from this. It's hard to make change. It's hard to step outside of that and really start to figure out, where can I impact the conversation? Where can I impact change? And my number one tip here is look for the small things. If we can get one or two small wins, those small wins can be strung together to create some momentum. That ultimately leads to big transformation. So you may not be able to look at your organization and say, there's the number one thing that is very reminiscent of status quo. Let me go fix that. But look for smaller things, introduce humanity to the workplace, introduce innovative ideas and how we embrace technology, does that process really have to be that way? Or can we make like a small adjustment, right? Instead of 10 steps.
Do we need that ninth step? Yeah. Do we need that ninth or 10th step? We're on the same lane there. Yes. Do we need that? Or is it, we've done it like that for 15 years, but we did that way because we had to fax the results in and get an answer back, or whatever, some other kind of thing that's just a holdover. So I like the encouragement that overall, the way we do things can always be tweaked, can always be changed, right? The people who are working in sales or marketing, right? You've spent some time as an HR leader helping with marketing for companies in that space. And that's so fun for me to have seen that in your history, because you get a chance to say, okay, what really is working? How do I reach people like me, who are leaders like me, who are trying to solve problems like I'm trying to solve? And they're always tweaking and changing and saying, okay, this actually worked a little better than last time, so we're going to stop doing the other one and do this. But HR is like, well, this is the way. Like there's one single way to do everything. And every one of us, we could spend 5 minutes talking about our way of hiring, our way of performance or whatever else, and we'll find all these unique differences. So there's not one single way. And that includes at your company, there's not one single way. Right.
Yes. And you mentioned it briefly there. Performance is one of the greatest examples of that status quo. And I remember the first time I ever heard performance review is dead. And then I looked around and went, oh, there was one company that adopted that and pushed the message. And everybody else was like, is it really? Maybe we'll just leave it where it is. And today the conversation is now pivoting toward focus on skills and skill development as a means to support that performance conversation. But still, organizations have a hard time letting go of that annual performance review because it is what we're comfortable with, even though we all hate it. I've not talked to a single HR professional in my last 5 years that has said, I love the traditional performance review. They say, I have to do it because my company says I have to do it that way.
One of my good friends, Angela Dunaway, and she may actually be in the chat and watching the event as an attendee this year, because I've seen her there in the past. But years ago, she was the HR leader for a local company, and she had all these managers who hated their performance review, their performance appraisal process. So she got all of them together in a room and said, okay, like this is like a timeshare pitch. Okay. She locks the doors, like, you can't leave the room until you decide what you're going to do, what we're going to do next. So she said, here's a blank sheet of paper. I want you to tell me what you want. And all of them got to weigh in. All of them got to say, well, it's got to do this for me. And so they had to find a compromise that worked for every single one of those managers. Some of them wanted it longer, some of them wanted it shorter. But at the end of it, they said, okay, this is what it should look like. She said, okay, from now on, no complaints, no issues. Like, this is yours, and I'm helping you put into practice. This is not my thing I'm impressing upon you or forcing upon you. And that changed everything for them. And so I like this getting out of status quo, because one of the things you said a minute ago was like this, you didn't say it exactly like this, but we don't have all the answers. We need to be using our other stakeholders, other people, other perspectives. You said new thoughts, right? Was what you said, that we have these other people weighing in on what great HR looks like here, because it may look very different from what we have in our head. And we're never going to be as effective as we want to be if we're always just playing to this music instead of what everybody else is playing to.
100%. And there are peaks of it happening out there. There was a book I came across in 2021, 22. I was specifically looking for what are some new books that are out there that are helping me understand reimagining HR on this side of the pandemic, because surely somebody's been writing stuff. There are a couple of good books out there. Happy to share the information with you so you can get it out to the audience, but take inspiration from it and just don't be afraid to push.
Okay. Speaking of push, like, we're going to push on. We have like 8 minutes left, 7.5 minutes left to get to the last two. And I'm going to try to stop talking so much, because I'm enjoying this so much. So what's number 3 on our list?
Number 3 is stop avoiding technology. Kind of goes hand in hand with the other two things we've talked about, but we, as an HR function, tend to be laggards in terms of adopting the new technology, whether it be the big stuff or the small stuff. Not many of us can go in and say, I don't like the HCM landscape. I'm going to go and carve it up and put my own solution together. And that's not necessarily what I'm talking about, right? Like, if you can't affect the change there, if you can't get into one of the specific platforms or systems, the learning system, the recruiting system, then look for the smaller stuff again. So I am having a lot of really, really fun conversations with people in the last couple of months about how generative AI can start to impact our function positively. And I say that, and I know there's going to be some eye rolls, like, oh gosh, they're talking about AI. But just as a small example, people are starting to leverage this technology as a way to help do some preliminary lifting, some ideation. It allows me to have a conversation with someone. I'm remote, so I don't have anybody in my office I can walk up to and have that hallway conversation, but I've got a bot I can interact with, and I've learned how to reshape my prompts and my questions to get kind of at the heart of what I'm looking for. But also, there are a million creativity tools and engagement tools and productivity tools that you could leverage to really just elevate the function and bring something new into what you're doing every day. And HR people are not technologists. I've often been tagged as, I think, what they call the purple squirrel, because I am a technologist at heart who is also an HR person at heart. And those two things don't often intersect. So you end up with a lot of aversion to technology exploration in the function.
There's one of our mutual friends, Christopher Lind. One of the things that he does day to day, he's a chief learning officer for a company, but he uses tools like I use for streaming, like we're running the event on today, StreamYard, and others. He uses those for some of his outside of work activities. And when it comes time for work, like, hey, we want to have a conversation with a leader and record that and share it for everybody else. It's like, okay, cool. We'll use the tools that I use, like professional broadcasting tools. We'll record it there. And they're like, that looks amazing. How did you make, like, this wasn't a crummy, audio on someone's phone or whatever. This was like really amazing. And he's like, it costs like $20 a month. It's not like a $10,000 studio. It just requires a little bit of time and effort to do this. And so, like, there are ways to do that. Absolutely. I'm with you on that. We should be using, whether it's for those kind of things, put a little polish on your HR. Why not? Right? Let's look as professional as everybody else does. Or it could be something new in your stack where you're going to say, we need an answer for this. One of our other speakers, Josh Rock, was talking about text recruiting, about how great it was. I'm like, don't assume everybody knows what that is and they're using that, because probably many people heard that for the first time here. But that kind of thing is just a chance for you to say, instead of saying, oh, that's just a fad or whatever else. No, just like you were saying, Matthew, I want to spend 5 minutes. Let's dig into it. Let's understand it a little more. Oh, I want to understand more now, or I'm good for the moment. I'll move on, but at least get yourself up to speed on those things.
It takes a lot to shift and adopt some of these things into your regular behavior. That's always been my biggest challenge. I would say a little bit, I am full ADHD, so I can get very distracted very quickly. So I had to learn how to employ some tactics and techniques that help me adopt these things in. But again, it's like 5 minutes of investment to figure out what works, and then just repeat the behavior, find some small technology, get comfortable with it, let that give you confidence to explore bigger technology, and then swing for the fences.
There you go. All right. What's next? We got three and a half minutes left. What's next on the list?
All right. So wrapping us up, I'm going to say this. I'm trying to say this without like any sort of facial expression that amplifies it. HR should stop asking for a seat at the table. The table is there. The space is available. You pull your chair up to that table, people will move around and make the space for you to settle on in. The thing that's been missing, in my opinion, is always we as HR tend to get locked in our function. It can be really easy for us to be the recruiters and the compensation experts and the benefits experts and the employee relations experts. We can do all those things, but oftentimes HR doesn't really know what's going on in the business, meaning they don't understand what your business is about, how the parts and pieces come together, who your target customer is, what your main services and products are. So the more that you can get integrated into the business and get out of the HR bubble, the more you're going to have relevance in terms of being able to show up and people listen.
This is so perfect. By the way, I forgot what your fourth one's going to be and how are you going to tie that in, but that's such a great fit for everything else that's come through the event so far. I know some people try to say, okay, what's the theme this year? One of the big themes is know the business, right? Know the business, understand it, because you can never be like in your dreams. You're like this amazingly effective HR person. You go to work and like half the time they don't listen to what you're saying, right? You have to say it 4 times before someone actually hears you for the first time. That kind of thing doesn't have to be the case. Right. And part of it comes from what you're saying there, Matthew. Know what's going on so you can speak into that. Right. If I know that you've got a problem, like, oh, you pulled your calf, whatever else. Oh, when I did it, here's how I solved that. Here's how I took care of it. Right. Here's how I got back to running again, whatever else. Crazy example. Right. When someone in your business is saying, this is our challenge, it's our problem, think about the people levers that you have access to say, hey, you know what? We've actually never done training on that. Do you think that might help with the answer or with solving that? Or we've never actually tried to filter or screen for that in the hiring process. How do you think we could do that in a way that would lead to better results there? That's not telling them what to do. That's not commanding and domineering, but you show up at the table with something helpful like that, like you're saying, everybody's like, I don't know, tell me more, Matthew. I want to hear more about what you're sharing there.
We as the HR function are the only people that have the perspective we have in the business, right? We see the business through a different lens. And so when we show up to those conversations, first we have to build the relationships. Right, get to know people and sort of what they do, find mentors, find coaches throughout the business to really pick up the pieces. But then you can show up and put your perspective through the lens of people in the business. And you never know what kind of ideas will emerge from those types of collaborations.
Absolutely. Goodness. We should have set aside extra time for this because this has been so much fun. And I want to keep asking you like follow-ups. I hope everybody else out there listening into this, by the way, we had a little fun with this. But I really want Matthew to challenge some things that all of you, and including me, we've probably done wrong at some point. And now we have the chance to do these things right. And some of these just stop doing entirely. That's okay. Will it be all right? We'll make it through together. So Matthew, if someone wants to connect with you, follow up, learn more about this, I know you said there were some other ideas we didn't even have time to get to. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
LinkedIn is always the easiest, most consistent, best place to connect. There are quite a few Matthew Browns out there, but if you do a search altogether, Matthew W. Brown, or combine my name with the name Schoox, Schoox, you will then find me. Look for the guy with the multicolored hair. I will connect with you and welcome all the conversations.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you so much. This has been a blast and a treasure.
Same to me.
All right. I hope all of you enjoyed hearing from Matthew there. Matthew, longtime friend of summer school. I appreciate you, my friend. I'm so excited. It's funny because when you came up on screen, George is like, hey, wait a minute. I've met him in person. He was like, oh, that's that Matthew. So that was a fun little connection for us. I really enjoyed hearing from you, though. All those things, like we talked a lot this week about things we need to be starting, we need to be doing, we need to keep going, we need to initialize this, all that good stuff. But in order for us to have that bandwidth, we've got to stop doing some other things. And I think like when that pops up to say, should I do that? Should I not do that? I probably should just let that go, because we've done that for a long time, but it doesn't add value, or it sends the wrong message, or it's just reinforcing that stereotype of what HR is all about. And so I've really, really enjoyed that. I hope all of you did as well. It looked so many favorite comments from this, by the way. Someone said the chairs have wheels, they'll scoot and make room. Like there's all kinds of fun little things in there. Everyone's so supportive of this. Great job, Matthew. All right, we have one more session here from Carmen, and then we're going to take a break. We're going to give some things away. We're going to have some fun with all of you. So hang tight for a minute. We're going to hear from Carmen about how to do your work, live your life, but not quite by the book.
Once again for joining us. I am here today with Carmen, and I'm excited about this conversation. Carmen, can you just share with the audience today a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yep. Thanks, George. And just like you, I'm excited to be here. It's my first summer school. Definitely won't be my last, especially looking at some of the agenda and guest speakers that you and Ben have put together for everyone. So again, thank you for inviting me. So hello, everyone. My name is Carmen Alou. Today, I'm a little bit of everything. So I am, on my work side, I am a senior HR director for a company called IQVIA. For those of you who don't know what IQVIA is, we are the #1 clinical research organization in the world, participating in clinical trials and all kinds of market analysis and data to help our pharmaceutical companies and medical partners do what they do even better. I say that's one of the things I do because I am also a real estate investor. Between my wife and my father, we own rental properties throughout northeastern Pennsylvania, as well as vacation properties. I'm also a father. I'm a coach. I've been a part-time adjunct professor. I make time. I run a golf league. So I try to pride myself in doing a little bit of everything. So when George asks me, what do I do? It's hard to say. It depends on what day, what time, what season. But I'm really excited to share a little bit about my background and one of the main reasons why George and Ben asked me to join us here today.
Well, let's dive in because I'm really intrigued. We talked a little bit prior to this recording, but I'm really intrigued about your thoughts about time, money, energy, that approach. What do you want someone to take away from that? And let's kind of dig into that because I believe you got a lot of thoughts on that will be beneficial for us all.
I do, George, and I'm all about people. If you Google right now, even while you're talking to me or later, Google time, money, and energy. The reoccurring theme is very simple. When you're younger in age, you tend to have a lot of time because you have no responsibilities much. The kids might not be in your picture. Your partner might not be in picture. You're just starting your job. You might have a lot of energy because, again, we're talking about being younger in age. You might be very well fit, but then you don't have too much money because you're just starting. So the picture you'll see online is just that. And then when you get a little bit older, you have, hopefully you're doing well in your career, so you have more money in your pocket. You still have pretty good energy because hopefully you're eating well and taking care of your fitness, but your time is small because now you're working multiple jobs, the kids come into play, you're trying to balance that. And then last but not least, this might be a picture of people that are a little bit older in their age. Now if they've done well in career and investments, might have more money in their pocket. They have time because maybe they're retired. But that energy level is very low. So that's the simplified version of time, money, energy. But guess what? That has nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about because when I think of time, money, energy, it's about prioritization, self-reflection, and also self-awareness. So, for example, right now, I could be doing so many other things with my time. George could be doing other things. You listening on this call could be doing with so many things. However, I appreciate you and all of us prioritizing our time. Where we want to be is right here. We talk about money. I have friends who is like, oh, I have no money. I can't go do this. But next thing I know, I'm like, oh, where were you last weekend? Oh, I was just with my friends. We went to a concert. I'm like, I heard you just say you had no money. So again, you find money for what you want to do. And then let's use another example. It's like, oh, I'm going to invite my friend out for a drink one night. We have to catch up. Yeah, I'm too tired. Maybe another time. But guess what? If that friend really wanted to prioritize, they would have made that time to come out. So again, and they would have found that energy because they wouldn't have been tired. So where I've had this concept and where I really wanted to share this philosophy is everybody on this call, we all only have so much time. We have money to do what we want. We find the energy to do what we want. And I challenge all of you to start thinking about your time, money, and energy in that way. What you prioritize, you're going to find that time, money, and energy. Then I'm going to challenge you also, what do others give towards you? So in that example I gave with my friend, if I really thought that my friend, not to say they don't like me, not to say they don't eventually want to make time, but in that moment, I'm not a priority to that person, and that's fine. But I really have challenged people, and I call them out on it, that listen, it's okay if you have something else going on. I respect that. I don't like liars. I don't like people who mislead. And I don't appreciate when people tell me one thing and do another. Yeah. So today, with George, I got on George's calendar. It was my goal to commit to joining George for this phone call today. It was my goal to dedicate my time to this HR summer school because I was so excited about it. And like I said before, I'm so excited to learn from it as well. But all of us could have done so many other things. But today, this was my priority. So again, that's the whole point of why I've approached time, money, and energy in so many different ways than what you would Google, just like I challenged you as the start of this question.
Well, Carmen, that was a lot. And so what I hear, and I love it because a lot of people says, I got time management issues, and it's really not time. We all have 24 hours a day. We got 7 days a week, right? It's how we prioritize. You got time for what you prioritize. When I think about it, and when I'm listening to you speak, I go to this thought process that I always have, is that when I was younger, I spent money, I spent time, I spent energy. As I've become older, I invest my time, I invest my money, I invest my energy. It's a mindset, right? At some point in time, there's a mind shift that has to happen for individuals, especially in the workplace. Can you talk about what it takes to really shift the mind when it comes to these three powerful words of time, money, energy?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great example of now you tend to, as you mature, as you learn, as you grow, even with positive experiences and negative experience, George, I think you have more, you put more value on what I also see as life currencies.
Yeah.
So to your point, you only have, or you look at it, you have. You could use that term, I only have this. Well, yeah, but you also have when there's people who don't. So think about people that have zero to little, and then there's people that have little but maximize it. So regardless of whether, and I've had this conversation even when at a very young age, a very wealthy, very respected person in my life told me, Carmen, if you have $1 or $10,000, you still find ways to spend it. And you might find times to waste it, or you might times to value it. So there will be people that have more money and waste more, and there's people who have less money who actually spend it wisely. So again, it doesn't have to do with how much. It really comes back to value and prioritization. And the thing is, you could talk about that with your time at work. You could talk about it with your time with your family. And I'm not here to say, and this might go a little bit, work is important. And yet I know at times we say you got to value your family time, and I get that too. But then there's times where if you work hard and smart, you might be able to actually have more time with family because of how you worked differently. And it's not always about working longer hours. It might be dedicated to using your time wisely. And I'll give you another example, George, before we might take this in a different direction. My wife and I now both work from home. And there are times when our home life blends into work. And I'm sure I could speak to a lot of people who work from home, where you actually could argue you work longer hours and more working from home, even though you don't have to commute. You might not have to get as prepared for certain things. But there are going to be a day where I tell my wife, listen, I'm going to get up early, I'm going to work late. You may not see me today, but I'm going to make sure I overcompensate for another day where if I have little to do that day at work and I'm ahead, You're not going to see me open my laptop or open my phone. And I have more time that day. So again, George, I had 24 hours on the Monday, I had 24 hours on the Friday. Spent it differently, prioritized it differently.
What's the benefit, as we're talking about looking through a different lens, what's the benefit to looking at work we do through a different lens as well?
Sure. So the thing is, and I know it's going to sound cliche, is trying to balance what you're good at and what you like. Because there's often things that I've been told, well, you should. And George and I were talking a little bit on how I got into HR. I've been told so many times I would be great with politics or I would be great to do things. Just because I might be good at it, I learned at a very young age I didn't like it. So I saw that even if I'm good at it, if I don't like it, it's not going to be fun. So I know we talk about doing what you enjoy and what you might have fun doing, and it's a really delicate balance because I'm sure, George, there's people on this call right now who would love to do things differently or do something in a different career and it just hasn't worked out. But I challenge you not to stop thinking about ways of either incorporating something fun even while you're doing your day job, which is why I answered the question that George asked me, which is, well, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do. Because I make a lot of the money that I'm able to provide for my family is my day job. If I would had my choice, I would run golf tournaments and golf all the time. But my golf game isn't very good either, George. And I'd say my kids would starve if that's how I got paid. But I'm able to balance that. I found a passion that my one day a week, one night, I don't coach. I don't do anything other than I run my golf league that one night a week. And everybody in my family and friends respects that day. So I get to use my business skills of running the golf league while playing in the golf league. And I don't get rich on it. I don't make any money on it. But it's about investing in what I enjoy. So back to thinking about ways of investing, not just investing in things with money. You also have to invest in yourself.
Yeah. That's the key. We talk about the two words that's really come up over the last couple of years, and I use them. It's something that I use a lot. If you're around me, for those who watch me or see me, I always say it's important to show up, right?
Oh,
But
yes.
showing up for others is great and it's powerful. You make an impact on somebody's life. But the most important person you should always show up for is you, right? How do you take care
Yes.
of you? Can you talk a little bit about the importance of taking care of you for those? Because especially in HR, what I've learned, and I didn't get into this space traditionally, right? I say nothing just happens, but sometimes opportunities open up and you find yourself at a place where you fit and you love. I've learned, and I want to send my love to everybody that's watching, especially those that are particularly in this HR space. It is brutal. It is draining emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically for those. And my heart goes out to you. I want to send my love. I love everyone out there. But sometimes in the HR space, I've seen so many men and women show up for the organization, show
Yep.
up for the leaders, show up for the employees, and then they don't have anybody showing up for them. But the most important person that we should show up for is ourselves. And when you find yourself drained in all those areas because all you've done is give and you don't have enough for yourself, can you talk about that value of really investing in you?
When I'm showing up even today, I'm showing up not just to share my thoughts, but I'm showing up because it's important that I'm hoping that as much as I'm benefiting from this conversation, I'm hoping to share and invest in everyone else. And I'm looking forward to taking advantage of the offerings here and listen to other people because if you think about, I can back to my real estate now. When I buy dilapidated properties, I can fix things up and go sell it. But unless I really impact the bones of it and the foundation, I don't want to sell something that just looks nice that's going to crumble. When my dad and I buy and build things, we take ugly things and we start inside and then outside. And people are like, Carmen, you only had to spend a little bit of money just to get it flipped and make that quick buck. I'm like, yeah, we could have did that. And then 2 years later, they're going to call me and I'm going to have a bad reputation because I sold them something that looked nice that didn't really have the bones that it should have. So I use that same philosophy, George, in myself. I try to also, one of the things I do at my high school is I made a scholarship called Pay It Forward. where I invest back. And the reason why I invest back is because I realize that as much as I'm working on myself, others also did show up for me. Others did help me. So I know I didn't get to anywhere I am by myself. So I've paid it forward in my scholarship that I've given out, George, where I'm recognizing and giving back to the school that invested in me. And I'm giving to students who have also probably didn't even think about the impact they've made on the school. So I'm recognizing them, but it's in the same concept. It's also, I'm investing in myself. I'm thanking those who have invested in me. And I'm also trying to continue to share so that maybe others, George, will also learn from me and then also take that on themselves and then push it forward. So it's constantly in and out and up and down. And the second we stop or think we're good, that's the scary part. Because I don't think we're ever really good. If you think you're safe, you're not. If you think you've learned it all, your kids or somebody's going to throw you a curveball that you never saw before. So that's the other advice I can give you is never stop investing in yourself. Even if you keep doing the same thing a little differently, that little different could be the difference.
Yeah. Speaking of advice, what advice, now maybe make this my last question. What advice do you have for running a highly effective, efficient HR function?
Yeah. Well, the thing I've learned in my HR career that's made me very effective and also just and you talked about how hard it is in HR. And it does. There's going to be days where you're like, why did I get into this profession? But the one thing that keeps me coming back, George, and where that makes it the best is earning respect and having respect. And the way you do that, what's gotten me as far as I've gotten is trust. And what I mean by trust is doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
If you can't do something, say you can't, but I'm going to work on it. Because I've had so many, and I talked about this earlier about lying and things like that, broken promises or like hidden agendas or just good intentions, poor follow through. That's terrible business practice. I've had people who I respected say, Carmen, I can't do that for you right now. Maybe I can later, and here's why. Or, Carmen, I want, and I've also frustrated people because I don't tell them what they want to hear, but I always tell them, I tell you what you need to hear, whether you like it or not. And that to me is back to that respect, but the laying foundation to be the most effective is building trust. Because if you think about our HR function, if our managers don't trust us, how far are we going to go? If our employees don't trust us, how far are we going to go? If our colleagues don't trust us, how far are we going to go? Because HR, for those of you in a small company, you might be all of the pieces of HR. For those of us in a big company like myself, I have multiple pieces of HR that I have to partner with. So unless we trust each other, we're honest with each other, coming back to that showing up. And what I mean by showing up is I do what I say. I tell you I'm coming. I tell you I'm going to add to that presentation, I do. And if I don't, then I basically lied to you. And what kind of trust do I have? So, George, I'm really going to end on it. It's a twofer, but it's about being respect, and you gain respect by doing what you say.
Yes, you're only as good as your word, right?
Right.
When your word doesn't stand strong, people stop saying your name. And so I always say, man, my name means more than anything, and my name remains if I'm a man of my word. And so let your yes be yes, your no's be no's. It's so important. Carmen, I've enjoyed this conversation. Is there any final thought that you can give to our audience today to wrap this session up at all?
I'm going to end with a sentimental quote, and it was my senior quote in high school, but I still live it today, is falling down does not make you a failure, but staying down does. So with that in mind, I know there are people out here hopefully listening that are very good at what they're doing right now and are secure. Unfortunately, I know there's probably people listening who are struggling to find a job or get the jobs they want. I'm telling you, don't stop. Don't let today impact too much of tomorrow. Keep fighting, keep pushing, and honestly, best of luck. If I could be of any help, and I've said this before, people have reached out, you can find me on LinkedIn, through there, message me. If we need to have I'll do my best to dedicate some of my time and make time for you. I'm not promising a golden ticket that I could tell you, do this will lead to that, but hopefully you'll be able to learn from some of the things that I've learned from myself or that people that I've respected given to me.
Awesome. Once again, you can find Carmen on LinkedIn, and we'll drop the link in the chat right now for you to be connected with him. Carmen, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy and everything that you invested in us today here at HR Summer School.
Okay, excellent. Good stuff. So Carmen cast a big net for us, right? And someone said this earlier in the chat. George picked up on it, but a lot of the things we learned here aren't just about being better at HR, being better business leaders, but being better people. And so some of the good stuff there tied in, really, really enjoyed that. Thank you, Carmen, for joining us, for sharing your wisdom, your wit, your insight there. All right. I think all of you are probably ready for us to give some things away. You may be getting a little bit antsy, like waiting to see if your name's going to pop up on screen. So we'll go ahead and we're going to do that right now. So we're going to take a few minutes, take a break. We're going to do some giveaways here. Let's drop that. There we go. We're doing some giveaways here, and then we'll have 2 more sessions before we do our big grand prize giveaway and wrap up summer school. It's hard to believe already, day 3. So, goodness, are you tearing up?
I am.
Okay.
I miss these people.
Just a little bit. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring this up and share with you some things. So really quickly, someone asked me earlier, where do you get the stuff? Still same thing. If you want a notebook, you want a shirt, we're giving a bunch away just a little later today. But if you still want one of those, get an extra one. Who knows? You can give it to a friend. Summer school website, scroll down to the green FAQ section. You can find all that stuff there. You get all kinds of fun colors. Someone just ordered a turquoise shirt, whoever that was. I can't wait to send me a picture of that. That's going to be awesome looking. And the summer school notebook, if you missed that the first day, it's actually featuring comments from many of you. So I've pulled in, asked for quotes, asked for encouragement, asked for things that you would share in any normal yearbook. And so that's kind of what that is. So there's ideas in there, there's prompts, there's George Rogers isms, all those kind of good things. So lots of inspiration in there, not just a notebook itself, but an inspiration continuing summer school's kind of feeling all year long. All right. So we're going to give some things away courtesy of Goody. So regardless of whether you won something, I'm about to share that list of 30 plus winners in just a second. But if you won it or not, you can go right now to ongoody.com/business. They'll give you $20 to give someone a gift. That's it. It's super easy. It's a lot of fun. You can send them something. If they don't like it, they can pick something else that they do like. You heard about Diana from ECO yesterday talking about how they use this. Several of you in the audience actually mentioned you use this as well. So you can try it out, check it out. They won't charge you a single thing to test that and give someone a gift. You want to send it to George Rogers. It's okay. He would accept it gladly with a smile. So here we go. So take a screenshot here. If your name is on this, you can make sure and follow up with the team. They're supposed to be reaching out individually to each of you. Rosario should be from the Goody team. If you don't get that though, and your name's on this list, you're like, hey, where's my email? You can ping Rosario directly and they'll make sure you get all settled. So congratulations to each of you here on this list. You're getting something special from Goody just for you, not even the one that we just shared. So everybody else gets that, but everyone here on the list gets a special gift from Goody. All right. Awesome. Fun stuff. I love giving things away. I love it even better when Goody's giving things away. It's a blast. Thank you to Goody for supporting summer school. Y'all are an incredible company. You're doing great things, helping us as HR leaders to reach and support our people and create some meaningful connections there. So we heard from Diana yesterday. All right. George, any comments? I caught you on your phone over there.
Oh, yeah, I was cheating.
He's scrolling.
I'm seeing if I was winning. I was trying to figure out if I was on the list. I was trying to get on the list, ladies and gentlemen.
Anything else you want to share? Any big takeaways from this morning so far? I know you were talking during Matthew's session, for example, some things that stood out to you.
Yeah, it's all we've gone through, and I don't know the word of the day yesterday, but we talked about this whole alignment and being authentic. Like everything is really aligning together with really what our heartbeat is behind summer school. As we try to connect, inspire, and educate, we're seeing a lot of these things happening. So I'm getting a lot out of it. I'm taking a lot of notes. As I'm looking through the comments, there's a lot of people, and I thank all the students in the classroom, because sometimes as you're listening and you're looking, there's a little bit of distraction there, especially for people like myself. There was not a lot of pictures in the comments, but some of these comments have been great. So continue to do that and add in the comments. Should I mention, somebody asked me about books as well in the comment. So we have books. Somebody knows that we have books behind us, and we're going to be giving away a lot of these. We have Talent Scarcity by the Ben Eubanks. That's out there. We're going to be giving away some of those. We also have Build a Culture Good. Ryan McCarty spoke Monday on day one for that. And then there's this other guy. There's a book back there from another guy.
That George Rogers guy. You
that George Rogers guy, Champion Your Purpose.
So George's new book, Champion Your Purpose, is out this week. It's available tomorrow. Tomorrow it goes on sale on Kindle. It goes on sale for the grand price of $0 on Kindle tomorrow. So if you get in tomorrow, make yourself a calendar reminder. Go to Kindle tomorrow. Go to Champion Your Purpose. It's on Amazon. You get the Kindle version for free. So tomorrow, go get it. You get your chance to do that and support George as it's launching this week. So exciting stuff. All right. Well, I'm a book fanatic. This is the little bookshelf behind me that you see, the big bookshelf in the room over there. I always wanted a library like Beauty and the Beast. You remember like the library with a ladder that moves around? Yeah. I don't have one of those, unfortunately, but I do love a good library. So book nerd here. All right. All the good stuff. Next up, we're going to hear from Colin Kingsbury. He's going to talk to us about some of the things that he's seeing more broadly in the talent market. Colin is with ClearCompany. They're one of the sponsors this year. Their focus, as you'll hear him talk about in a minute, I love this phrase, talent maximization, helping us bring the right people in and enable them to do their very best work. So you'll hear from Colin what he's seeing in the market across all their customers, why it's hard to find people, all that kind of good stuff. Here we go with Colin. Welcome to another session here at Summer School. I know you've gotten some great ideas, very practical advice and tips and all that good stuff as we're going through here. I'm excited for a few minutes to talk to Colin here about strategy. We're going to talk about some of the bigger picture things that are happening in the market, some of the things that it's easy for us to forget about because we're just living this stuff every day. And he's going to help us pull back a little bit and say, hey, here's some of the big changes. Here's some of the big things that they're seeing over at ClearCompany as they're supporting employers of different industries, different sizes across the space. So Colin, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Glad to be here today.
Absolutely. So I mentioned that you're with ClearCompany. We appreciate them supporting the event here. Can you tell me a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please?
So I am the president and co-founder here at ClearCompany, and what we do is talent maximization. We help companies not just hire people more efficiently and better, but we help them engage, retain, develop those employees into long-term assets for the company at every of their life cycle.
All right. So I want to talk to you about talent for a little bit. It's a weird market we've been in, lots of changes, lots of strange dynamics, things like that. And one of the things that you kind of threw out there a minute ago is this problem now where everyone's new, right? We're running this issue where retention is a problem everybody's talked about, but you were telling me a story about an example, right? Just to illustrate this a little bit about how you're seeing this in your personal life and everybody else is too. Would you share that story with me?
This is an incredibly annoying, but also funny story, which is that a couple weeks ago, I have a place out in Western Massachusetts, and my alarm system sent me an alert that the power had gone out. Mm-hmm. And so I asked a contractor who was out there who had been doing some work for me, hey, did you guys shut the power off? And he said, no, I meant to ask you what happened. And because customer service and all these other things are incredibly difficult, it took days to actually get somebody from the power company to show up. And when he finally showed up, this older, probably baby boom generation lineman showed up, and a very helpful guy, really total mensch. But as he's going through all the problems, he's telling me, he's like, just things are a mess these days at this place. He has tons of problems. And I asked him, I said, do you have a lot of new people there? And he goes, oh, are you kidding me? Everybody is new. And a lot of them are good, but nobody knows what they're doing. And this is something that I think for most of us, when you think about service and you think about all of the problems that we encounter in so many parts of our life these days, still multiple years into the recovery from the pandemic, companies are still continuing to deal with workforces that are often understaffed. But they're not just understaffed, they're also under tenured. And they are full of people who are recent hires because turnover has continued to be an issue for many companies. And so you have that combination of understaffed and under tenured. There's not enough people to do the job, and the people they're doing the job don't know how to do it yet. This echoes in with productivity. I've seen a lot of observers blaming low productivity on work from home, which I think is one of the biggest red herrings ever. I think it's a much more basic thing that it's just nobody knows how to do their job because they're all new.
Well, those linemen, as an example, right? None of them are working from home. So you can't, that can be your scapegoat this time around. It has to be something else beyond that. And I really appreciate this perspective on it, because I talked with this leader at an organization recently, and she was telling me our tenure is off the charts. We have people who, you're the new guy here until you've been here for 10 years. And that's how long people stick around this company. She said, as people, the problem for us is new people coming in, just a long time to get up to speed, a long time to get ramped up and everything else. And the difficulty is whenever one of those people leave, they die, they retire, they move to a new company, they decide whatever's next for them. We're losing everything that they've accumulated, all the knowledge, all the insight, all the little weird quirks of the job. Like, oh, you got to kick the machine right here to make it work. All the little things that we take for granted because they work, when suddenly they don't work, everything just kind of falls apart. And we can't expect someone just stepping into this role, as much training as we give them, to be as effective as that person's been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years, who has all the kind of the knowledge, the bruises, the scrapes, all the real world knowledge of putting that together.
Yeah, there's actually, I think it's such tenure and productivity and these things are such a fascinating area. And I actually think that there's like a sweet spot where obviously if your tenure is really low, you have the problem we have now, which is everybody's new at their job. And no matter how good their intentions are, they're just not going to be good at that job, right? You have to learn. At the other end, where you have that company that has just incredible tenure, one of the things that they probably have not learned how to do well is how to transmit the knowledge to the new guy and the new person, right? Whereas if you're growing steadily and thus always bringing in new people, or if you have a little bit of churn, right? You have some steady churn, you're kind of forced to learn how to do it and learn how to transmit that knowledge. And it was an interesting problem for us very early. This is going back probably 12, 13 years to when, to predecessor of ClearCompany, HRM Direct is what we used to be known as. We had brought in an employee, we were growing a little bit, and we brought in an employee who was, by all outward indications, this like incredibly positive, bubbly, outgoing, just like, I think in their onboarding email to the company, they said that they hoped that they would bring like a more magical unicorny sense of something to the office.
Okay.
At the time, it was like, oh man, like full, like level 5 millennial. And some months in, this person was not being magical and unicorny. Like they were clearly a little downbeat and other things. And I decided to invite them to go for a walk. It was one of those 2 months of the year when Boston is a nice place to be. And just say like, hey, what's up? And it was a really illuminating experience that I remember very well, because this person proceeded to basically lay out how they felt totally disconnected and excluded from our culture. And what it came down to was simply that we had a crew of people, like a lot of startups, that had been working together for a couple of years, had a really well-honed way of doing this. And we actually didn't even need to talk to each other to communicate. Like we communicated telepathically, right? But so the new person coming into this didn't see an obvious way in and felt excluded by that. And so it prompted us to very immediately, okay, wow, we have to start getting really deliberate about this. So yeah, very interesting. But yeah, that function of how you bring that new person in, and this is intrinsic to how we think of things at ClearCompany, because I think to me, culture is one of the most important and most misunderstood things in business. And it's often looked at as something that's very difficult to measure and think about systematically. But I think culture comes down to how you do 4 things. It's who you recruit, It's the behaviors that you recognize and hold up as exemplars of great performance, and like, this is what we celebrate. It's how you reward people with bonuses, variable comp, raises, promotions, assignments, those kinds of things, right? And those, how you do those three things determine who you retain, like who chooses to stay and become part of the leadership that figures out who you recruit, how you recognize, how you reward them, right? So to me, that's the transmission belt of culture.
I like all the metaphors like you're bringing together on that one. I really like that. So I wrote that one down. Who you recruit, kind of what you celebrate, and then how you reward. Are those the big three?
Yeah, it's recruit, recognize, reward, retain.
Okay,
that's
perfect.
And that's what that is what, because ultimately culture is created by people, and that is the feedback loop that determines it.
Like that. People talk about like culture is what you tolerate, right? The lowest common denominator, what you tolerate there. But I prefer the version of this is what we celebrate. This is the stories we elevate. That's going to tell everybody else this is what we're looking for. This is what we expect. Culture can be this vague and fluffy thing that no one, like the unicorn, right? No one can wrap their arms around. Or it can be, we're telling you specifically, this is a behavior that exemplifies who we want to be as a company. If you want to be here, do things like this. Treat people this way, right? Go above and beyond when it comes to this kind of customer. Here's what kind of expectation we have for you. All those kind of things fit into that really well.
Definitely.
Okay, excellent. One of the things that you and I were kind of joking about before we started here, but I think it's a great metaphor because probably everyone here has had a leader come to them and say, hey, we need to get another person. We need to hire someone else. And they treat you like a vending machine, essentially. You taught it like the people store. Talk about that and talk about why that does not work anymore.
So when you ask me about what are people saying to me and what am I hearing from customers and the challenges they have, right? And it gets back to these challenges of we don't have enough people and we don't have tenure, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. It's fascinating to me because finally a few years ago, I had to look this up, and the Harvard Business Press published a book called The War for Talent in 1997, and that's so long ago that I was still in college when they published it. And so that's how long. So for 26 years, we've been talking about a war for talent. And I think until 2021, that war was kind of a Cold War. And when CEOs would get up and say things like, our people are our most important asset, a lot of them probably had their fingers crossed behind their back. And the reason why they did is because what every company knew instinctively to be true was when push came to shove, you could always go to the people store. And we continue to see a huge number of things in the market and solutions, right? Because what everybody wants is to be able to wake up in the morning and go, we don't need those kind of people. We need this kind of people. And they can just put an RFP out to a series of vendors and say, give me 500 of this, right? Because if you go back 5 or 10 or 20 years, in a lot of ways, you could do that, right? And there were ways to do that with more or less efficiency. And what we started learning in 2021 was that just like every other kind of store, right? Because for most of us, even being born in the 70s, I don't remember empty store shelves. That was something that largely happened when I was too young. But in 2021, you started going to stores and like they just didn't have stuff. And you had to wait 6 to 8 weeks for something to get restocked. Well, the People Store was no different. The People Store shelves were empty. And if you needed 100 linemen, you were either going to get low quality or you're going to have to wait a really long time for them to trickle in. And so I think, and where we are today is from kind of that early 2021 to the present, observers and supposed experts have erected a series of mileposts saying, here is when the talent market and the labor market will go back to normal, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, by back to normal, they mean 2019, which for those of us who were there, was not an easy year in historical terms to be an employer. It's just that compared to 21, 22, and the present, it looks really easy by comparison. But first it was when the wave of COVID passes. Then it was when we get vaccines. Then it was when pandemic unemployment runs out. Then it was when the stimulus funds, when people spend all their stimulus money. And there's been this undertone in these discussions of, Oh, and once that happens, they'll come crawling back. They'll come back to our crummy schedules and all of the things that everybody has resented for 100 years, but didn't have the power in the balance between labor and capital. They're going to be forced. And right now we're down to like one thing left, and that's a recession, right? Because those same experts have been calling for a recession since last summer. So for almost a year, this has been predicted over and over again. And if you keep predicting a thing long enough, eventually you're going to be right. I have no idea. All of our internal data that we publish says the labor market continues to be extremely strong. In fact, it's improved since Q4. So, we're not seeing any signs there. But if we go into a recession and that doesn't put us back, then it's over. And here's the thing. We have known for 30 years that a tight labor market was coming. Winter is coming, right? And we know, and why do we know? Because the baby boom generation was going to retire. And so for decades, ever since the baby boomers hit the labor market in huge numbers in the 70s and 80s, economists have been saying, well, someday they're all going to retire. And the generations behind them are either too small. My generation, Gen X, there's not enough of us, or possibly your generation, I'm guessing here, the millennials, have not necessarily had the time yet to develop the skills. So we've known for decades that there was a crisis coming, right? But as is often the case with these slow-moving crises, we're very bad at responding to them. So I think the labor market that we have today, there's a good chance that employers are going to discover that this is normal. This is the normal market. And so to be successful in this market, you can't depend on the people store to populate your company.
Goodness. I appreciate that bigger perspective on things there. Again, I told everybody at the beginning, we all listening in there right now, that this is going to give us a chance to take a bigger step back. And this is a lot of what I've been speaking about, writing about over the last few months.
You have a book out there, right?
Yes, I have a book exactly on this. We're giving away some copies of it at the event here because it's related to this conversation of here's the drivers, here's the reasons that it's been so hard to find people. And to your point, there are people right now, they're sitting on the sidelines saying, what's going to bring them back? We think that this is going to do it, and it's not doing it. There's still a number of people who are not participating in the labor force. The economists have no clue why. And so we're just kind of like everybody's sitting on their hands waiting to see what happens next. And so it is this weird market from a labor perspective. But at the same time, every employer I'm talking to, for the most part, unless you're a technology company or a really large enterprise, almost every employer I'm talking to is saying, we're still hiring. We're still bringing people. Do you know where I can find whatever this position is? We're still looking for those. And you said some of those own data is backing that up as well.
It's funny because people, I talk to a lot of people and they say like, oh, it's like things must be down for you. It's like all I hear about are layoffs and all of this. And it's like, look, technology, I've been in the tech space in some form for 25 years. I've seen at least 3 major downturns in that from 2001, 2008, and 2022. Tech actually historically is like a 5-year boom bust cycle. It's like oil, right? It's a boom bust industry. And we just had this weird thing where from 2010 to 2022, it was just boom, 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 right? So we had a long boom that broke that pattern. But it's very normal. Tech has that cycle. The other 95% of the economy, as you say, is in a very different place and is still understaffed and under tenured, and so they're not, and that's a lot of what's sustaining the economy these days, right? The consumer is still in good shape. People are spending money, and if people are spending money, the economy is going to be strong.
Excellent. All right. So one of the big takeaways that I want all of you listening in here to get is that even though we hate the term new normal, like everyone hates that term, it's the most universally hated buzzword, I think, in the most recent stat I saw, and yet what we're hearing from Colin here is what's been happening, what's been going on, the tightness of the labor market, it's not going to change overnight. And if it does change, it still won't be this massive shift back to, okay, great, I can post and have 100 people apply for my jobs now. It's going to be still a tight, tough, hard slog going forward. So don't think the people store thing is going to be your answer there where I can just go grab someone easily. It's going to take some strategy. It's going to take some tools. It's going to take some effort to make sure that happens and happens well. All right, Colin, I would love to dive into this for another hour with you, but I know we've got to move on. If someone wants to learn more about ClearCompany, the work that you and the team are doing there to help employers solve some of these problems around talent and retention and the other things there, what's the best way for them to connect or learn more?
Go to our website, clearcompany.com. You'll learn more about talent maximization there. Fundamentally, what we do, we don't just help you hire, we help you engage, retain, develop. So instead of having to always go back to the people's store, we help you in-source, we help you develop, and we do it all in one place. So instead of having to integrate a stack of tools yourself, we can provide you everything in one place to do that. Come to our website, learn more, and reach out, and our team would be happy to talk more with you about it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you again, Colin, for your time, for your perspective on this. I really appreciate it. This has been a ton of fun for me. It's like a little nerdy economics class, and I just enjoyed it so much. Thank you for spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, wonderful. Okay, so some of you were mentioning in the comments like the phased retirement thing, and so I haven't talked about my book this week, and I don't mean to plan promote it or whatever, but so you were talking about that.
Promote it. It's a great book.
Sure. Talent scarcity. And so those of you that are saying, hey, we've got a shallow talent pool, we're not sure how to find people. The book, I wrote it because I kept hearing that from all these people and they weren't sure, like, what do we do about it? So in that, there are lots of stories, examples of companies that have done creative things that I'd honestly never heard of or even thought about. And the phased retirement thing, I'll give you like 60 seconds on this really quickly. One of the stories in the book is from a company called Aerospace Corp. And one of the things they do is the day that someone hits retirement age and retires out, the very next day they can come back and work for the company on a part-time basis up to a certain number of hours a year. And they can do that all in one big batch, 3 months, and I'm done for the year. I'll come back next year, or 10, 20 hours a week for the duration of the year, just staying plugged in, just staying connected, just adding value where they can. And what I love about it, and I've mentioned this in the book, it's a talent practice. It's brilliant. It solves a lot of the problems many of you were talking about with the phased retirement thing. But the thing that I love about it, there's a social good there as well, because a lot of the research says that when someone's completely disengages from work, from all those relationships, all those things, like their life starts going downhill. They have a lot of issues, health problems, and many of them end up dying early because of that, because they've just unplugged from the rhythm of life. And this keeps those people plugged into the rhythm of life and reminds them that they still have something to contribute. They still have people to mentor. They still have value to offer the world. And so that's one of the stories in the book. I talk about lots of other ones, but there's some amazing things in there. If you want to know more about it, we'll give a couple copies away in just a little bit to some of you that were chatting about it, that had some comments on those things, because I think it's relevant and I love bringing some of the practical things. All right. Speaking of practical, our last official session here of summer school is going to be with Peter Sursi. I saw him in the chat a minute ago, so I know he is super engaged, ready to go, pumped up. And we're going to share with you the session from him. He really dives into how to take all the stuff you've been learning over the last couple of days, put it into practice, put it into action, not be like me with the crazy Post-it notes that end up get stuck on the monitor. And then 2 months later, they fall off and they're not sticky anymore. And I just throw them away. They are going to get into action. And so we'll share some things with you during this. We'll give you some good ideas. And I can't wait to help you learn from Peter, who is alongside all of you. He's a senior this year. He's been in summer school since the beginning. I appreciate you, my friend, and can't wait to have you here on the stage. And welcome to our last session here at Summer School 2023. I hope you've had as much fun as I have. It's been, as always, like an exhausting but amazing couple of days, really diving in, hearing from some amazing speakers, lots of content, lots of ideas, lots of inspiration as well. And I don't know about you, but one of the hard things for me is when I go to an event, you're like, all the things, let's go back and do everything. Oh yeah, I've got a real job. And so Peter's going to talk about how he does some of that, how he pulls out the key things he can take action on, how to do that well, how to filter and all that good stuff. So I'm so excited, Peter, to have you here with us, because you've been a longtime supporter of summer school, and this is the first time for you to take the virtual stage with me. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation.
So Peter, I'm really thrilled that you're here with us today. Before we get into the fun conversation and let you run with some of the ways we can put this into some practice, would you take a second and tell the audience who you are and what you do, please?
Yeah, so I'm currently the head of finance, modernization, accounts payable, and relocation services at the FBI. And I was the former head of talent acquisition for the Bureau. So I've been in the Bureau 25 years, started as a Japanese language analyst, did the first part of my career in the foreign language program, then had like 15 years in HR. And the last couple of years, I've been in our finance org I mean, I'm still doing HR stuff for them, really. It's like, how do you solve problems? How do you talk to each other? How to communicate across distance? So it's basically still HR problems, but that's what I do.
We'll let you in with the finance title. It's okay.
Yeah,
You're not the only one on the
I'm
agenda.
excited to see how do you use finance lingo to talk to a couple years ago. I set this process in place for myself every time I finish a conference. And so this is sort of how I handle this. So the first thing I do is I always set a meeting with myself on my calendar and I block real time to like unpack the conference. So like whatever you do, like go put an hour on your own schedule and take that time for yourself to like unpack your conference notes. And then I try to go through my notes and think, okay, of all the information that I absorbed, what's good for my current job and my organization and my company, and then what's good for me and my personal career, right? And so like starting with your job and your company, like there's always things that you heard, and usually there's like stars in your notes. It's all very relevant to what you're doing right now. Like, oh, this is exactly what we're talking about. I could use this study. Oh, I'm interested in this IT product. You know, this is I want to talk to that guy because we're literally doing the same thing, or I heard he solved this problem this way, or she took that action. And so there's always those things that are relevant to you and your job right now. And so in that meeting, that's when I sort of unpack all those. And then I set whatever meeting I need to have with my deputy or my direct reports or the relevant people to be like, hey, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. So that's the first thing you're going to do. The second thing you're going to do is like all the things that you heard where you thought, oh man, Ambrosia needs to hear that, or wow, that'd be great for Paul, or oh man, I was just having a conversation with Carrie the other day and she said that she would love that study. And so then you make a list of those and then you shoot out your emails to other people. It's a way of showing caring and concern and connectedness in the office. You'd be like, hey, I was attending this amazing HR session, this HR conference. This guy, fill in the blank, spoke. This woman, fill in the blank, had this amazing book. I totally thought of you because reason. Here's the link, here's the name, whatever. I just thought I wanted to pass this on. Hope everything's going well, blah, 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 blah. And you're done. When you send out like 4 or 5 of those, first of all, people love that because they feel like, oh my God, they were thinking of me. Also, like sometimes they go back and they actually like go get those books or read those articles, and then they're getting ideas. So you're propagating those ideas. We go back to that learn, apply, share model of professional development. Well, this is the sharing part, right? And so you think about what's good for your peers, right? Your other peers. And then you make a list of like, okay, this isn't for me right now, but this is something I've thought about, or we've talked in the organization about maybe doing next year. So you're sort of making a list of like, not now, but maybe later things. And you're just going to write the list. So you're just going to, by the act of writing it, you're going to sort of collate that for yourself. This is how you're deepening and strengthening your value as an HR leader for the organization, because there's nothing that makes you feel more like an HR badass to be in a meeting and somebody's like, well, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, actually, I was attending a professional development session about that a couple of weeks ago. And this guy spoke on this, and here's the relevant study. And they look at you like you are amazing and you feel great. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to deepen your own value to the organization by just stacking that up and having that in the back of your brain, your back pocket. So when the time comes, you have given some thought to it, or you have some frame of reference. So that's how you're going to take this and you're going to the value for the company or for your current role. So that's like the first half. Then you're going to be a little bit selfish, which like as a good Midwest boy from Columbus, Ohio, it is so hard to be selfish because that's like the worst. But you do have to be a little bit selfish and think, okay, what was great for me and maybe my career, right? And so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the win and think about all the people that said the things that validate the things that you say all the time, and just take that moment and bask in the win and be like, see, it's not just me. My professional peers in a professional conference say the exact same thing and I am right. And so just give yourself that moment to say like, yeah, I actually do know what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly. And then the same thing, take the commiseration of people struggling with the same things you're struggling with and be like, oh, it's not that I suck. It's that this is really hard and that people are really struggling with it. And that should make you feel great, because that means like, oh, this is an industry-wide problem. Everybody's struggling. Everybody's trying to get their hands on it. Some might be a little ahead. Some might be a little bit behind, but we're probably in the mix. And so you don't have to feel so desperate that you and your team have not personally solved this industry-wide problem. And so then just take that commiseration. Think about what people said that interest you personally. So to me, there are always things that I'm interested in that don't have anything to do with my current role. My company is not interested in, my organization is not interested, but I'm interested because either I'm trying to grow as an HR professional or it's my personal interest. So think about those things, right? Whether it's I'm really interested in the intersection of AI and the art space. And what does that mean for writers and artists and things like that? Maybe somebody referenced a study that, of course, has nothing to do with the FBI, but I'm personally interested in that. So think about what interests you personally. What did those speakers reference? Did they reference books, materials? Go follow them on LinkedIn. Go see if they have websites. If you loved what they said, they might have said other things you loved. So maybe Google them and figure out, like, have they been in other talks? Like, what are they saying that you feel like is going to keep you current in something you're really interested in? And then I think what's really hard to do, I mean, I know I'm terrible at that, is I send the LinkedIn request with no comment a lot of times, but it's so much better to send that comment and be like, hey, I heard you at summer school. I love what you said about this, 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 and this. And so when you hear the speaker, try to take at least one note during the conference where you've quoted them. And so you can reference that so they know, like, you actually did attend their session and we're actually paying attention. And then throw out the hardest thing to say is, hey, if you had time, I'd love to meet for a virtual coffee. If you're interested, I'd love to explore this more. Or I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and just throw that out there. It feels hard because you feel like you're bothering people. And yet I get those all the time and I never feel that way. But to turn around and do it is so hard. But do that especially if you felt a connection to somebody, or you're like, oh man, they're really tackling the same issues I am. We're all about expanding our personal network, and this is a great way to do it because this event is all about bringing community together. We've clapped together. We've hit that heart icon during the LinkedIn live stream a million times. So take advantage of that and be like, hey, would you do a virtual coffee? Most people are very open to that. And then you can, like, switch to your Calendly or switch to your work email or do whatever. And don't try to make it anything more than it is, just a getting to know you better session. Like, hey, we're two people in HR. We'd love to get to know each other better. We're all about expanding our personal network. Tell me a little bit more about you. I'll tell you more about me, and then just see what develops, right? And so I always try to do that. That's the hardest part for me personally, but I really try. And then the last thing is, you've made all these notes and you've set all these plans, you've sent your emails. Just give yourself some grace, because, like, you are also not by yourself within 30 days going to solve all the world's HR problems. Like, I know we come out of these things thinking I am freaking Superman, I can do it. And that's a great to hype yourself up. But then reality intrudes, and just it's okay. It's okay. Like, you can't personally, you can do a lot, and great HR people, they do a freaking ton and they make a huge impact, but you actually can't do everything either. So just give yourself that grace to, okay, this is not a problem that my organization is willing to tackle right now. This is not a problem that my management team is really, they're not quite ready for that yet. That's okay. Put it in the hopper. It's back there. The most important thing when we come to events like this is we are preparing ourselves. It's like preparing that ground so that when the seed arrives, we are ready to bloom, because we have spent time preparing. We've spent time thinking about it. We've enriched ourselves with all these amazing ideas, and we're ready to go. And that's really, I think, what you should take away as the big final thought for HR Summer School is, like, this is all about preparing yourself for the next amazing thing you're going to do, and just put yourself in that space where you're able and ready to do that when the opportunity presents itself.
I don't think the FBI would appreciate you dropping the microphone on the floor. That's like a mic drop sort of moment.
I actually have a mic on a boom, so I can't really drop it on the floor. But
technically, that was incredible. Goodness, I'm taking my own notes over here, my own takeaways from your takeaway session, which may be a little bit meta for everybody. But
that's the Ben Eubank style. I'm taking notes during my interviewing of you. Yeah.
Can I ask some questions, some follow-ups?
Yeah, perfect.
So one of the things that I do a lot of is I've got an idea, like you said, now's not the right time, or there's a project right now in the windshield. There's nothing that's going to fit in around that. Do you set calendar reminders for yourself or some other way of following up at some point down the line to say, this is a good idea, but not right now?
I do. It sort of depends on whether is this really in my plan or is it just speculative? So for example, right now it's midsummer 23. The fiscal year budget starts in October. So we're starting our fiscal year 24 planning right now. So I do a lot of, like, when I have my planning session with my team in late August, early September, when we sort of set out our goals for the new fiscal year. So I will set a lot of, like, hey, dump this to the fiscal year 24 plan, or, hey, this is something I want to tackle in 24. So I'll make notes to that calendar invitation in the future, be like, oh, don't forget to tackle that. So for those things, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I can do that. I will. Otherwise, what I do is I try to keep all my conference notes in like one notebook. And then in the front page of the notebook, I just write which webinars, which conferences are actually in that notebook. And then I sometimes like sticky the edges and all sorts of things. And then I just keep them. And so then later on, I'm like, oh, where was that thing? I attended that session with that guy. And then like, I'm like going through books, but like I have it and I find it. So that's usually how I do it. If it's more speculative, like maybe we'll get to this someday.
I'm hung up on still use a notebook for all of that.
I mean, yeah. Hey, we still have interoffice mail envelopes. Okay, so
people like getting
the FBI
mail.
is amazing, but like
there we go.
Sometimes it is what it is.
Yes, it is. It is an office environment and all the things that come with that.
That's right.
Okay. One of the things you talked about was kind of commiserating about or being okay with some of the hard problems you can't solve. And I think that was a really great call out, because some people are going to hear things here and immediately dismiss them, like, oh, well, that will never work here, or that sounds really hard, so let's find something easier to grab onto. And I don't think those two things are necessarily the answer. It's more what you said, what's, hey, you know what, that is really big, that is really hard, we are trying to do that, we can't quite solve it right now, but it's okay because other people are trying to do the same thing. I have found when I've heard that in an event, come back and talk to our leaders, hey, I know we're talking about this thing, we're not sure how we're going to tackle it. I just heard from another leader, similar company, similar size, about the same stage, and they're also facing that same decision. And here's the 3 decisions points they're trying to make, right? I don't know the answer, but here's a little bit more information about how others are making the decision, so it might guide us in what we're doing next. So I just like that approach. I've never heard anyone talk about that way.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, your mileage may vary depending on your company and how connected they are with their peers and competitors in the industry. But the FBI is an organization that there are things that only the FBI does legitimately, right? Mm-hmm. So we sort of struggle with this, like, so therefore everything we do, only the FBI does. I was like, but we still have to pay bills. We still have to hire people. Like, we don't have to look for a unique, super special snowflake solution to every single problem. Mm-hmm. Because this is not an operational problem. This is an administrative problem that all organizations of 37,000 people with a national presence and 300 locations have. Like,
yes,
it's an organizational problem, right? And so sometimes it's good to bring that in to a room where everybody's like, what are we going to do? I was like, well, we could look to everybody else who solved this problem or not solve this problem. And to your point, like, sometimes they're super big. Sometimes you just have to like chip away around the edges. Like, okay, we can't solve all this, but could we fix this one little piece and like take that? It's okay, to just take that tiny little piece as a win, because you've opened a door for somebody else to carry that ball forward later, and that's okay too.
Build on that success over time. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you talked about was, we often in these events, we talk about the importance of networking and everything else. And during the moment, it's like frenzied, thousands of comments, all the connections happening, everything else. And then it goes dark. And so sort of like a combination of earlier, like, hey, set a reminder 30 days out to say, did I circle back with those people? Yep. Did I actually put something in the LinkedIn invite? Like you said, if I did and they didn't respond, they might've been just accepted, but they're busy, or they didn't see the response, because I don't always see those. Like, I'm going to circle back with them and just check back in, not the automated spam ones that we get all the time. You accept and it's like, hey, would you like to buy something? It's still different, but I like that piece, because so much of how I've learned, and when I was working in HR, like, I had a person that I could go to for any benefits questions, because they were the most brilliant benefits person I'd ever met at a conference. And so I latched onto them, and still today, I was actually recommending them to someone that was asking some questions about it, because 10 years later, they're still the smartest person I know in that space. So the social connections aren't just for fun and networking and let's all band together, but that person is a resource potentially. Their expertise, whatever else they're bringing to the table, even if it's, hey, we've tried this, it didn't work, telling you their story of what didn't work is helpful there. So approaching it like they're a learning connection as well, not just a social.
That's right. And we talk about HR for HR a lot, and like, do HR people take care of themselves? No. Do we need to do a better job? Yes. This is your support group, like, where you can get an answer, you would have a venting session, you can get commiseration, you can get a referral to somebody, like, hey, I don't know that, I'm not that person, but like, I know a great person, so let me make you a connection, because you're trying to solve this very specific problem, right? It's okay for it to be both social and for your work, right? That's part of what we're trying to do. Again, we know we are valuable assets to the company, right? It's hard sometimes, I think, especially in our industry, and we're not the only one, but sometimes it's not valued in the same way because they're thinking about profits, or I want to achieve unicorn status, or I got to break into the market, or X% growth rate, or all of which are important. We're business leaders. We got to think about those things too. But like, just because your company doesn't value it in the same way does not mean that it is not valuable. It does not mean that you are not valuable. That was a really hard lesson for me to learn, but I feel like I have to embrace that now, right? That means that you are bringing value and ideas to the table. If your company is not ready, if your organization is not ready, that's okay. Doesn't mean it's not a valuable idea, just means it's not the right time for them. But you should be thinking about like, this is part of your deepening your value, both personally to yourself, but also deepening your value to the company. Because what you want to do is be that person. They're like, oh my God, that person is so smart. Every time I ask them an HR question, they're always going to these conferences and they know a million people and they always have an answer. And yes, you do, because that is the kind of person you are. That's it.
Right.
That's it.
So all the people who this was meant to be like how to put this all into practice, but it's also, I'm like pumped up hearing it. So, oh well, it is what it is. If someone wants to connect with you with an introduction, an actual thing that says, here's what I heard from this session, that I love Peter because you're brilliant and funny and you're amazing. If they want to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best way, or is there another way?
LinkedIn is definitely the best way. The only other Sursis online are related to me. So, but yeah, Peter Sursi, you can find me on LinkedIn for sure.
Okay, wonderful. Peter, this has been a blast. I appreciate your time, your encouragement for the community out there. Congrats on your senior year. So glad to have you here with me.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
To everybody else out there, I hope you've enjoyed summer school. We're going to wrap up shortly. All right. Goodness. Great session from Peter there. I love the takeaways. I love the recommendations. And apparently there was this huge HR notebook like fan club out there. I told George there may be more comments on notebooks than on anything else in the event, like as a theme. So there's that. All right. You ready to give some stuff away?
I am. I'm just saying.
You a little teary-eyed?
I am. You see it? It's coming out. And Peter's going to make fun of me because I'm so emotional. But I love my alumni, man. The fresh women, men, the newcomers. I don't know if freshman is another word now. Mm-hmm. Freshmen, sophomore, juniors. I'm excited about the future. College is going to be starting in about 12 more months for a lot of these people.
We'll find out. We'll find out what we're going to call it. That's the burden's on me to figure that one out. Okay. So let's give some things away. We have really I've enjoyed so much the chance to see all of you again, to connect with all of you, to hear from you what this brings to you. And so we pay that love back a little bit by giving some things away. So let's bring this up and share this. So as always, let me take my little banner off so you can actually see what's going on over here. So giveaways, if your name's on here, grab you a screenshot of this page. So we're giving away some summer school notebooks, some summer school t-shirts as well, some last copies of George Rogers' book, Champion Your Purpose. I almost had to ask you the title again. Champion Your Purpose. Again, that goes, it'll be available tomorrow on Kindle. It's available today, but available tomorrow for free if you want to go get it and tell all your friends. And then my book, Talent Scarcity, I'll give a couple of those away to people who are commenting during that session, had some things to share and some things they're excited about. All right. Time for the big thing. So a couple of years ago, we talked about the HR conference cruise here on Summer School, and I've spoken on the cruise a couple of times. George is going to be speaking on the cruise that's happening next March, going to Haiti, going to Jamaica. So get your sunscreen, all that good stuff. And so excited about it. If you're not the winner, guess what? You can still go on the cruise. It's still a ton of fun. It's very similar to the feel you get with summer school because you spend some time over a couple of days with people. You eat meals together. You have the chance to go to the beach together. Like, it's just a really neat kind of connected feel there. A little bit jealous that I couldn't get on there with George, but it'll work out. So the winner this year, she has no clue her name's about to be shared. So I hope she's listening in, but we want to give you a congratulations. Misha, thank you so much for supporting summer school. She's a senior this year. She's been in the chat, active, engaged the entire time. So we'll get with you to work with the team over at Aspect, who's over the cruise and everything else, and get you all the details on that for how to take advantage of that. So congratulations to you, Misha. A couple other things, I think, as well. I'm trying to remember what else is next on my slides, and I can't even remember. Oh, yeah. Sorry. It happens. There's a lot of details.
Upcoming events. Everybody's wanting to know what's next.
What's next? So many of you are like, well, I don't want to wait till next year. Last year we did a field trip edition, but we didn't even know when we were doing summer school last year that we were doing a field trip. So it was a little bit of a surprise for us. So a couple of things. George and I are doing another live stream George has been, yeah, he makes the jokes with the data all the time, right? But I've got him a little bit on the dark side. And so he's just finished a new study here at Lighthouse with us on engagement, performance, culture, business impact, really diving into that. So we have some new data coming out on that. We're going to have a live stream in August. I'll make sure that when the email goes out with the credits information, there's a link in that. You click it and you'll automatically be signed up for it. It's going to happen in August, just like our other live streams. If you can't catch it live, you get the recording. So all that good stuff. We'll make sure and get that link out there for you so you can sign up and hear what's new, what's different, what's changing there, what your workforce is looking for. There's some really amazing insights in that I've had fun hearing George talk about, knowing that he's already on the data side now.
You pulled me in, Ben. I'm not Ben data, but I'm there. I'm a freshman.
There you go.
In Ben's special night class. There we go.
HR Nerdery 101.
HR night school with Ben, Data 101.
Okay. So today, if you did not catch it, I'm wearing my Disrupt shirt, the shirt that we made a couple years ago. We do these events. Disrupt HR is a international set of events. I saw someone comment about it in the chat earlier about a local event. They happen across the US, across the world. So if you're not familiar, you can do a quick Google of Disrupt HR, find that. I'm the one who runs the one here in Huntsville, Alabama. And so we're running our first one since pre-pandemic, coming up in August. If you are within a couple hours radius, come on down. We're going to actually do a special thing for summer school attendees, alumni who come in the day after it. So it happens in the evening. It's a fun 1 hour session, very engaging, just kind of a wild experience to see the content turn through. And then the next morning, we'll do something fun for summer school teams with people before you head back off. So if you want to come to that, you can ping me for details. We're still sharing or submitting the date. I actually have Vice Principal Melanie. I haven't mentioned her this week. So love her, appreciate her. She is actually working on getting the location set for that. So that's going to be happening in August as well. So a couple different things coming up here to feed your HR soul, as Bobby Joe put it earlier this week. So awesome. George, I'll let you say a quick thank you to the sponsors.
Yes, thanks to our wonderful sponsors. They have been great part of what we do and why we do what we do. And so it's been great to have them. iSolved, Quantum Workplace, Plum, as you heard today, People Strategies, ClearCompany, another one, as well as Goodies. And I know that we have 32 people. They got their Goodie award. And so thank you so much to all our supporters for this week. HR Summer School wouldn't be what it is without your support. And so we appreciate everything that you do for us and all our students.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay. And then as a hat tip for those of you who are saying, hey, it's my senior year, we've kind of celebrated you all week long. If you're a junior this year, don't worry, we'll get you there. But for the seniors this year, we've actually pulled the names for everyone who's a senior this year. You're going to see that when we sign off in just a minute. That's going to scroll for a bit with some background music. And just, if you're there, grab you a screenshot, celebrate it, post it on LinkedIn. Tell everybody you have been at summer school and you're proud to be a senior. And here's what you've learned. Here's how it's impacted you. I love seeing those. I appreciate every single one of you. This is always a blast. I always feel like at a loss for words as we wrap up. George, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you being here with me. 2 of the 3 days is not so bad, I guess. So being here with me, it's always a joy to hear from you, to learn alongside you, to see you interview some of the amazing speakers. Like, all that stuff is wonderful, and thankful for another year.
I'm honored, man. It's been great to know that 4 years has passed with HR Summer School, and it's been impactful each and every step of the way. And I'm grateful for our friendship and our brotherhood, and all these lovely people, thousands of people that are here virtually with us that are joining the HR Summer School Network and community. And then also a shout out once again to Kenny Dang, the 2023 Unity Award winner. Congrats to you, as well as Misha. Thank everybody for being a part of HR Summer School. And I cannot wait to feed my soul here in August.
Yeah, should be a blast. Awesome. Have a great one, everyone. Enjoy your week, and we'll have the credits and all that good stuff out to you tomorrow. Have a good one.
Take care.